Okay, welcome. Wait, I think my camera is not working again. So this happened last time. But I'll stop my camera for now. So while we wait for more people to join us, I'll be playing a video, an old video, since the topic natin today is Kalayaan or Independence Day. So I'll be playing before I introduce our guest tonight. Or wait, tonight sa Pilipinas, this morning sa US, this afternoon sa Ireland. I'll be playing a video muna of an old video that I made about 2 years ago about Philippine Independence Day. So yeah. So while I play this video, please feel free to type your questions in the chat and also introduce yourselves in the chat, where you're watching from, and I'll give a few shout outs throughout the stream. So without further ado, let's begin with the video. Kung mahanap po siya, ayan.
Alam mo bang sa haba ng kasaysayan ng Pilipinas ay marami na itong naging Independence Day o Araw ng Kalayaan? Di nga, paano naman nangyari yun? Wait lang, if you do not speak or understand Tagalog, don't forget to check out the links up here or down below for the older English version of this video. And don't forget to subscribe. Now back to our topic. Mabuhay o sa Kapampangan, luwid kayo. Kailan ba talaga ang araw ng kalayaan ng Pilipinas? Ngayon, ipinagdiriwang natin ang June 12 bilang araw ng kalayaan o araw ng kasarinlan o Independence Day ng Pilipinas. Pagkat noong June 12, 1898, idineklara sa ilalim ng nooy Pangulong si Emilio Aguinaldo ang kalayaan ng Pilipinas mula sa Espanya. Ngunit ang unang Republika ng Pilipinas ay hindi rin nagtagal pagkat tinalikuran ng mga Amerikano ang kanilang pangakong pagrespeto sa kalayaan at soberanya nating mga Pilipino. Sa simula'y kakampi ng mga Pilipino ang mga Amerikano laban sa mga Kastila. Ngunit di naglaon ay lumabas din ang kanilang tunay na kulay at kanilang tunay na pakay sa ating kapuluan. At kasunod nito ang pagputok ng Philippine American War mula 1899 hanggang 1913. Sa madaling salita ay pinalitan lamang ng mga Amerikano ang mga Kastila bilang mga bagong colonial masters ng ating mamamayan. Ang pagyurak ng Estados Unidos sa kalayaan ng ating inang bayan ay isa sa mga kinikilalang unang halimbawa ng imperialismo ng Estados Unidos. Sa paglipas ng panahon, noong November 15, 1935 ay idineklara naman ang semi-independent na Commonwealth of the Philippines. Bagamat isa pa rin itong kolonya ng Amerika, ay nagkaroon ang Pilipinas ng kaunting kalayaan. Ang pananakop at paghahari ng Amerika sa Pilipinas ay nagtagal at nagpatuloy hanggang World War II. At noong October 14, 1943, sa kalagitnaan ng ikalawang digmaang pandaigdigan, ay siya namang naging proklamasyon ng ikalawang Republika ng Pilipinas. Sa unang tingin ay mistulang isa itong pagpapatuloy ng naudlot na kalayaan ng ating bayan, kalayaan mula sa Western imperialism. Subalit, ito pala'y isa lamang puppet state ng mga Hapon, pagkat ito'y hindi tunay na malaya. Ang Second Republic of the Philippines ay nagtagal lamang hanggang August 17, 1945. Kasunod nito ang pagtatapos ng World War II. At sa wakas, noong July 4, 1946 ay iginawad ng Estados Unidos ang kalayaan ng Pilipinas at idineklara ang kalayaan at kasarinlan ng ikatlong Republika ng Pilipinas. Tama, July 4, kagaya mismo ng Independence Day ng Estados Unidos. Ngunit kung iisiping mabuti at pag-aaralang maigi, ito pala'y isang kalayaang may kaakibat na tanikala. At noong 1962, sa tulong ng pinsan ng aking lolo, ang dating Secretary of Education at National Artist for Literature na si Alejandro Anding Roses, ay idineklara ng nooy Pangulong Diosdado Macapagal ang June 12 bilang isang special public holiday sa kabuuan ng Pilipinas bilang pagkilala sa proklamasyon ng ating kalayaan noong 1898. Pagkat kagaya ng Independence Day ng Amerika ay dapat kilalanin din nating araw ng kalayaan ang araw kung kailan tayo mismo ang nagproklama sa buong mundo na tayo'y malaya na mula sa tanikala ng kolonyalismo at hindi ang araw na binigay ng mga mananakop. Subalit kung iisiping maigi at pag-aaralang mabuti ay hindi lamang pala ang June 12 ang unang araw kung kailan ipinahayag at ipinagsigawan ng ating mga bayani ang ating karapatang maging malaya mula sa tanikala ng kolonyalismo. Pagkat noong August 1896 ay naganap ang makasaysayang sigaw ng Pugadlawin o sigaw ng Balintawak. Nang buong pusong ipinahayag ng mga katipunero ang simula ng himagsikan laban sa mga Kastilang mananakop. Kagaya ito ng iba pang mga revolusyon sa iba't ibang bahagi ng mundo. Gaya ng Grito de Dolores, ang siyang Independence Day ng Mexico, at ng Cry of Ipiranga na siya namang Independence Day ng Brazil. Kaya naman marami ang nagsasabi, bilang na ang mga historians, na marahil ito ang dapat nating ipagdiwang bilang tunay na araw ng kalayaan. Pagkat ang pagsigaw ng ating mga bayani at ang pagpunit ng sedula ng mga katipunero noong 1896 ay isang makasaysayang pagpapahayag ng ating paninindigang makamit ang ating kasarinlan at kalayaan. Ngayon ang Pilipinas ay kinikilala ng mundo bilang isang independent nation state. Isang malayang republika kung saan ang soberanya ay pag-aari at karapatan ng ating sambayanang Pilipino. Kaya naman ngayong ika-122 araw ng ating kalayaan, naway ipagdiwang natin ito sa pamamagitan ng ating taus-pusong paglilingkod sa ating inang bayan at ang makatarungang paninindigan na ipagtanggol at ipaglaban ang ating mga karapatan. Ipagdiwang natin ito sa pamamagitan ng pagsunod sa halimbawa ng ating mga bayani, sa pagsunod sa yapak ng ating mga bayani, sa pamamagitan ng pagkakaisa, pagkilos at paninindigan. Paninindigan para sa makabuluhang kalayaan at mas magandang kinabukasan ng ating mga anak at susunod pang mga henerasyon. Pagkat ano nga ba talaga ang saysay ng araw ng kalayaan kung napakarami pa rin sa ating mamamayan ang nagdurusa sa kahirapan at sa kawalan mismo ng kalayaan? Anong saysay ng kalayaan kung magpahanggang sa ngayon ay napakarami pa rin sa ating mga kababayan ang pinagkakaitan ng kanilang karapatang pantao sa iba't ibang bahagi ng mundo? Kung tutuusin, ang tunay na kalayaan ay nangangailangan ng paninindigan sa makatarungang pagkilala sa ating mga karapatan. Ito'y nangangailangan ng pagkakaisa at pag-unawa kung saan ang lahat ay malaya at pantay-pantay. Isang malayang sambayanan kung saan walang iwanan ano pa man ang kulay ng balat o antas sa lipunan. Yan ang kahulugan ng kalayaan para sa akin. Kaya naman huwag mahiyang mag-comment sa ibaba kung ano para sa inyo ang ibig sabihin ng kalayaan. At hanggang dito na lamang muna sa ngayon. Huwag kalimutang mag-like, mag-share, mag-comment at mag-subscribe. At kung gusto nyo akong tulungang gumawa pa ng mas maraming video gaya nito, suportahan lamang ang aking Patreon o bumili ng aking libro. At kung nagustuhan ninyo ang t-shirt na ito mula sa Ugat Clothing, ay silipin nyo na rin ang link sa ibaba para sa marami pang ibang mga t-shirt ng ating mga bayani. Maraming salamat po. Hanggang sa muli, kita-kits o sa Kapampangan, Mikitix.
Yan. Oh, you can see me now. But I think it's still glitchy as always. Anyways, hope you like that old video that I made. Maybe I'll turn off my camera while I dahil naglolo ko na naman siya. But mabuhay, luwid kayo. Let me share something really quick. Ay, ayaw. Anyways, never mind. Ayaw na. Why am I always having technical problems? So anyways, if you are new to my channel, if this is your first time watching this channel or joining me in my live stream, my name is Kirby Aralio, or like I always say in my channel, I'm your friendly Pinoy historian and culture bearer. And in this channel, I make videos and other content about our people's diverse history, colorful cultures, and everything in between. And yes, so Philippine Independence Day is just around the corner. It's just a few days from now. Maybe ilang tulog na lang. Independence Day na sa Pilipinas. So today we'll be diving deeper into the history of colonialism, revolutions, and ask ourselves, how do we celebrate Independence Day, beyond the surface? And I am joined by a special guest. Si Datu Don Kiram. So Datu Don Kiram is a direct descendant of the Sultans of Sulu who grew up in Jolo City, the historic city of Jolo, and he studied in Notre Dame of Jolo and is currently living in Ireland since 2005 with his own family. So his upbringing ignited this lifelong curiosity and enthusiasm about history and culture. So Datu Don and family were actually recently featured in GMA, representing or presenting Irish Halloween from their YouTube channel, Mr. and Mrs. K. And he can tell us more about his channel later. He is also a co-host of Tara Let's Talk, a podcast on Spotify and YouTube. So without further ado, let's welcome Datu Don Kiram. Ayan. Sige.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. Kirby and all the viewers of Kirby's channel, which is like amazing channel for history when it comes to Philippine history and Southeast Asian history. Thank you very much, Kirby, for inviting me, or I should say, we've been talking about this for quite some time now, like doing
Yes.
live stream, and we were kind of thinking, when should we do the live stream? And I must say that I am delighted that I've been invited. So
Thank you.
thank you.
It's an
Yeah,
honor to have you. Although my camera is still not working.
still not working. That's the
See,
problem of
it's
live stream sometimes.
yeah. But yeah, so I
Yeah,
guess this is gonna be more of a casual conversation.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and then
Perhaps I must say in advance that or I should say, what brought me here. Um, it's just my curiosity about my history, not only my history, but the Philippine history, and obviously Sulu played a very important part in the Philippine history, but it's not being talked about
yeah,
really. Sadly, but the real truth is that yeah, it's not being talked about. And for me, as a descendant of the Sulu Sultans, I must say that I'm very curious about the pasts.
hmm
Are you there, Kirby? You're
yes,
glitching. Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, you can't see me, but I'm here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And in the past, I've always knew that like the history of the Philippines is all about well, when it comes to freedom and all these things, um, it's about it, when you look at or when you read the books in the Philippines
Yeah,
before, when I was still studying, it's not really mentioned the southern part of the Philippines during the Himagsik and all these things, right? And for me, um,
hmm
or as a person who's like living in or who lived or grew up in the southern part of the Philippines,
yeah,
for us, we knew that we were never conquered by the Spanish, by the Spaniards. By they called them Spaniards at that time, and we knew that. But having said that, um, in the later part
yeah.
of the Philippine history, we've been um, what you call this thing. Um, are you? Yeah, I can see you there now. It's good.
Yes, I'm back.
Yeah, finally. Yeah. So, um, like when you're living outside the Philippines, you tend to kind of
Mm-hmm.
be curious about
Yeah,
where, what's your past like, and you
yes,
tend to kind of say, okay,
that's
maybe
true.
I will be digging deeper into my history. I knew the fact that yes, I am a descendant of like Sultans of Sulu, um, but it's just that there is no written record or anything like that that would say, or if I may confess, that oh yes, you are. There's no book, there's no written anything,
Yeah,
but I knew it, and the people in the southern part of the Philippines, which is like the Holo Sulu, everyone knew, like our bloodline, you know.
Yeah.
But it's just that there's no proper written record, and probably it's because of the fact that in the past nobody's really writing anything, and that's why I wasn't able to see anything at all. I wasn't able to read anything, except for the fact that my my elderlies, they always talk about it, and they always um, the spirit is there, and the people back in Sulu, they knew who we are, and they knew my elderlies, they knew
Yes.
my ancestors. But for me, growing up that time, obviously, it was kind of a normal. If you're in a situation like that, you don't really feel like you are in it, because you're just like a kid, you're just like growing up, and
Yeah.
uh, that kind of way. So um, the big question there, upon searching, upon like knowing my past, and I was able to kind of find, I was able to find out stuff regarding Sulu, regarding Sulu Sultanate, and all these things online, and
Hmm.
written records online, um, which is like a proper newspaper and all these things, right? And but having like let's go back to like the topic, the kalayaan topic, right?
Hmm. Sige.
Um, the I arrived to a question wherein, as Sulu, as a person coming from Sulu, given the fact that we have the history about not being conquered by the Spaniards, I came up with a question on how do we really celebrate Independence Day, right?
Yeah.
How do we, how should we celebrate Independence Day
Yeah.
from that part of the Philippines? But before you answer that, why don't we go back into um, how we have come up with, like, okay, himagsikan and all these things, and maybe your video earlier on
Yeah.
showed us the summarization of all the things that happened. You've
Yeah.
summarized that in like 7 minutes or something, but perhaps you can expound more about our history before
Yeah.
we, or before you conclude into how we should celebrate Independence Day from like
Uh-huh.
in Sulu. So yeah.
I guess for me, one main point that I want to share with
Mm-hmm.
the viewers is, a lot of the viewers, marami sa mga taga Pilipinas, they're not aware
Yes.
that Mindanao and
Yeah.
Sulu were not really colonized by Spain. Because we grew up, we just think like, oh, this whole territory that we call the Philippines, we were a former colony of Spain. Pero
Mm-hmm.
it's important for them to realize, a lot of the Filipinos out there, na hindi lahat hindi buong Pilipinas naging colony ng Spain. In fact, it was only
Okay.
mostly the lowlands, right? So mostly the
Yeah.
lowlands in Luzon and Visayas, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So there's even parts of Luzon that were not fully colonized. Like for example, yung mga sa Ifugao,
Yeah.
that wasn't really fully colonized until the Americans came. Same with Mindanao. So Mindanao and
Yeah.
Sulu did not become part of what is called the Philippines until the Americans took over, and it was
Mm-hmm.
a bloody war where they um in or the process that they did to make Mindanao and Sulu part of the Philippines was bloody. There was a lot of
Yeah.
massacres that happened, a lot of communities, villages that were burned down. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess I want to start with that, just to remind people na hindi lahat parte ng Pilipinas doon. So yeah, I hope that's a good start.
That's a good start. Yeah. And before that, actually, there is always this conception, or probably like it's a
Yeah.
misconception, I must say, that Philippine history only started when the Spaniards
Yeah, that's
arrived
another one.
to the Philippines. This is a very misconception, I would say. So imagine 1521 when Magellan arrived or discovered. They would always say discovered the Philippines,
Yeah,
but in fact, if they, if they watch your videos, you've explained everything. There's so much. I'm so happy. I'm so glad that a person like you, a young one, actually, a young one,
thank
is
you.
very much enthusiastic when it comes to like Philippine history, and the fact that you're actually not living in the Philippines, you're in California. So it's
Yeah,
like, wow. Um, I salute you for that,
thank you.
and yeah, very much, and yeah. So, can you tell us
Yeah,
a little bit more about like Philippines did not start when Magellan
yeah,
discovered the
yeah.
Philippines. So yeah, can you say
Sige.
something about that, the pre Magellan era?
Yeah. So a lot of people again sa Pilipinas, we were taught, even our textbook still says this. A lot of this, or a lot of us were taught that the history of the Philippines started yeah in 1521, 501 years ago. Um, that the history of the Philippines started with the arrival of the Spaniards. That before the Spaniards, ano daw tayo, tawag ito, savages, barbaric,
Yeah,
isolated from the rest of our neighbors in Southeast Asia. But that's not really true. I just want to remind since, well, I do remind them on my channel. Pero
yeah, you do, yeah,
for
yeah,
those who are joining us now for the first time, the Philippines again, the islands before it was called the Philippines, before Magellan even realized there's such an island it's called or there's such an island, a group of islands in the Pacific Ocean and Southeast Asia. Um, that our people have long been civilized. Our people have long been we've had deeper connections actually with our Southeast
hmm,
Asian neighbors. Because even today, a lot of Filipinos think that our neighbors are like foreign, are like
yeah,
di makarelate. But if you
yeah,
look
yeah,
at
yeah,
history, but if you look at our history, we've been really connected with them for a very long time. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of like, for example, the misconception yeah, before the Spaniards we were not civilized, but
hmm,
when they came, you see in their own notes, in their own records, how they were amazed by, they were surprised. For example, they were surprised that a lot of us can read and write in the different parts
yeah,
of the Philippines. The literacy
hmm,
rate was higher than in Europe. So,
yeah,
so
yeah,
if anything, we can, more of our ancestors can read and write than in Spain itself. They were surprised that our people were so clean. They were
yeah,
actually surprised that we showered every day.
yes, yeah, yeah.
So there's a lot of those misconceptions that still is prevalent sa Pilipinas
But
na
when it comes to like cleanliness like that,
yeah,
do you think we can attribute that to like the what you call this, the pre-colonial Filipinos, or I must say the well, if I can say it directly, the Muslims, when it comes to cleanliness, it's always like
yeah,
I'd say it's like an OC type of cleanliness when it comes to Muslims, because the way like Muslims pray 5 times a day and they have to clean and all these things.
yeah,
So part of the daily life of Muslims in the even in the past, they always clean themselves. So
yeah,
do you think that there's a relation between,
yeah,
like when you said it there, they found out, oh, must Filipinos, or how do you call it? These guys are like clean people, they thought of
yeah.
like, oh my goodness, they thought it's the opposite. So do you think maybe
I
partly?
think partly, yeah. I think there's a big part of it because when they got here,
Mm,
a lot of the a lot when they first got to the Philippines, a lot of our islands have already been converted to Islam. So they were
okay.
so I'm pretty sure there's a big part of that that culture of being clean. But another part of it too is that we're a tropical country, so it's always hot
Yes.
in the
Hot.
Philippines. So
Yeah,
it's natural
of
for our
course.
ancestors to, or they have more of a reason to shower and bathe every day kasi mainit
Yes.
and very humid, unlike in Europe where it's
Yeah.
you're in Europe, so
Yeah.
alam mo
I
na,
I,
di
I
lahat
can.
naliligo every day.
Of course, alam ko 'yan. Talagang ano 'yan. Yun.
But yeah, I hope that answers your question. We can't say for sure, but yeah,
Yeah. Well, I was just speculating about that because of the good thing about this is that for me, I can share the experiences, or I must say what we do back in
uh-huh.
Holo, and it's amazing how internet is kind of merging our, like, what you call it. I'm not saying ideas, but like, we can share online. We can share experiences,
Yeah, yeah,
your experiences, my experiences, and perhaps with that, we can find out like a conclusion where, oh, maybe, or even like a speculation about the past.
yeah,
So that is good. And how about, like, in when the Spaniards arrived in the Philippines at that time, they call Moors. They call them
yeah,
like Moro, but
yes,
it's actually Moors. So
yeah,
is there something like you can tell us about that?
yeah. So
Why?
that,
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you, oh,
the
you
the
want me
Moors.
yeah.
Yeah, tell us more about that. I'd say, Maestro Arolia.
Wait, can you repeat what you said? Sorry, I missed it.
Oh yeah, about the term Moro. Um,
Yeah,
how come the Spaniards at that time they call them like Moro instead of other names? Is there
yeah.
something like in the past, or like in the previous history
Yeah,
of Spaniards?
yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because another, I guess, misconception.
Oh, that's the Siri.
It's okay.
Yeah,
It's okay.
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of Filipinos are not aware that even Spain itself used to be Muslim. So the whole
Yeah.
Iberian
Yes.
Peninsula, Portugal and Spain, they've been Muslim for almost 1,000 years when they were conquered by the Arabs and the Berbers and the Moors.
Yes.
So that was that
More.
was actually the name for the Muslim people in Spain back then, Moors. So when they got to the Philippines, they used the same term with the same prejudice, with the same racism against the Muslims in Spain.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we kind of inherited that there because or let me just backtrack. So for almost 1,000 years, Spain and Portugal was ruled by Muslims and was actually predominantly Muslim. Even the people there, even the natives there were
Yeah.
converted to Islam. So it was only in the 1400s, 1492, the same year that Columbus discovered the Americas, that Spain was able to kick out all the Muslim kingdoms in Iberian Peninsula.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yun. So just a reminder to folks that even Spain itself has a long history with Islam. That um, they, I guess, when they first got to the Philippines in the 1500s, so medyo fresh pa yung history nila against the Islams, or against the Muslim kingdoms, that
Mm-hmm.
yung hatred nila against the Muslim kingdoms they brought to the Philippines. So sadly, it was applied to the people in the Philippines. One,
Yeah.
you can clearly see in the name they called the natives of the Philippines who were Muslims as Moros, not by their
Mhm.
ethnic group. So a part of it was that racist history that they had against Muslims in Spain, and another part of it is ignorance. They didn't know what to call our ancestors, so they just like, okay,
Yes. Yeah.
they're Muslims, so let's just call them Moros. Even though Moros actually just refers, or the Moors refers to the Muslims in Northern Africa and of course Spain and Portugal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nakataka lang. May sinabi si Amla sa comment. Sabi niya, the
Oh,
Abbasid and Umayyad Caliphates were advanced civilizations. Yes, so when Spain
correct.
was
Yeah.
Muslim, was part of the Muslim world. Actually, fun fact sa mga hindi nakakaalam. So we have this group of Filipinos who always credit Spain with civilizing Filipinos. But if you look at Spain's history itself, a lot of their sciences, a lot of their universities, a lot of
Muslims.
their knowledge came from the Muslims.
Muslims.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
just a reminder to people that
It's amazing how um the the well, kind of the history. tinakpan lahat.
Yeah.
But obviously, the nature of like whoever is going to conquer a country, a nation,
Yeah.
is always like covering up things, covering up whatever is in that
Hmm.
environment. Like, when it comes to like their own history, they will cover up all those things, and then what they will do, then obviously at that time, they want to conquer your nation. If they want to conquer your
Yeah.
nation, I have to impose what we do. It's not like, hey, we're gonna follow you. No, it's the nature of conquering, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Even the when you talk about coffee, when you talk about
Hmm.
coffee,
Yeah.
um, what's gonna come into your mind straight away? It will be, oh, coffee. Maybe Italians, discovered it. Maybe like French. But in fact, coffee was discovered by the Muslims.
Yes.
That's why it started in Ethiopia, and then but it was
It did.
first used by the Muslims, and then
Yeah.
no wonder there is this Arabica coffee, Arabica coffee, because of like the Muslims in the past, they were the first one who kind of discovered coffee, and
Yeah.
it's amazing, ano lang yun, medyo nag-side lang tayo ng konti,
That's
but
okay.
it's part of a live stream,
Yeah.
um, it's amazing. So yeah, what I was going to say, um, when it comes to um, what else when we talk about kalayaan and everything like that, right? Before we go into that conclusion
Yeah.
about how do we celebrate, how do we really say, okay, kalayaan and everything like that, or how should we celebrate Independence Day in Sulu or parts of Mindanao? Um, yeah, at that time when I was, if I may share, at that
Yes.
time
Yeah.
when I
Go,
was
please.
growing up, um, I kind of really vaguely, I'd say, yeah, we do celebrate Independence Day when I was growing up, and I remember we sometimes make like, like um, a paper, sort of colored paper, and we make them like flags and all these
Oh
things,
yeah.
and then
Yeah.
yeah, remember those days, when
Yes.
like as a little kid, so we make them, and then we kind of have like, can't remember if we have like a parade, during that time.
When
But
you wave
um,
it.
um yeah, definitely we have like an artwork, a Philippine flag artwork. So that's what we've been doing in the past. But for me as a child at that time, whatever my teacher says, I would just do it,
Yeah. Okay.
as anyone else,
Yeah.
same as anyone else.
Yeah.
And when it comes to saying, okay, um, but funny enough, in that region, we knew we were never conquered by the Spaniards.
Yes.
But still, when it comes to Independence Day, Araw ng Kalayaan, hey, thank you, we've been set free, like all these things. We always celebrate them, but we
Mm.
never question really how should we celebrate it.
Yeah.
So, um, going like fast track, in the recent times, um, it made me, ask myself, should we really celebrate Independence Day in Sulu or in parts of Mindanao? So it's like it's always, in my head,
Yeah.
and even here, and I'm already like in Ireland and all these things, and like other nationalities will be asked, "Oh, it's Independence Day in the Philippines," and oh yeah, 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 and you know, it got me confused, because well, I'm, for all the viewers out there, I do well. We do celebrate Independence Day here as a Filipino, right? But
Yeah.
like I'm only kind of curious, and that's why this maestro Kirby Araulo, uh, we're going to ask him, and then he will be telling us later on his conclusion and all these things. And so, yeah, with that in mind, saying, oh, we keep saying it there in Sulu. We were never
Yeah.
conquered by the Spaniards. We were never conquered. But then every Independence Day, we will raise the flag, Philippine flag, and say, oh, happy Independence Day.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it makes sense. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here to start separatism. No, it's not like well, I'm just curious, same as yourselves. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of way. And yeah, it's like it, it's a never, it's an answered or a never answered question in my head. Um, that thing. Um,
Yeah.
so, is there anything else? Here's the thing, right? When it comes to datings, there are two dates that, how do you say this? Really popular, or really like when you
Yeah.
say Independence Day, there's always like two dates. Don't mind the other dates there, in between, because it will make more people confused. But when it comes to dates, two dates that's kind of really, really, well, kind of confusing, and people are like saying, "Oh, which date are we supposed to kind of really celebrate?" Well, you mentioned that already in your video, but if you can just expound more, like the 12th of June, 1898, and the July 4th, 1946.
Uh-huh.
These are the two dates. Um, when it comes to Sulu, or people from Sulu, I'd say these two dates. I would say it would be more of the July 4th, 1946, when Americans finally recognized that yeah, you have your independence. But having said that, it contradicts to what Diosdado Macapagal, President Diosdado Macapagal said before, that
Yeah.
he doesn't want other nation to kind of recognize that, or to say that we are
Yeah.
free. It has to be the Filipinos. That's
Yeah.
why he reverted back to like June 12th
Yes.
instead of like July 4th. But with these two dates, the June 12th, 1898, that's the date wherein the Sulu people, Sulu Sultanate,
Yeah.
they are still free.
Yeah.
You know, they are
Yeah.
still free. So it's hard to think, how would you celebrate something? How would you celebrate freedom where in fact you are free that day? Still
Good
free.
point. Yeah.
So, that's why I was kind of thinking, oh my goodness, um, oh, like, what can you say there, Kirby, about that, about those analogy? I must say. So tell us, educate us more.
Yeah. So I guess when they did the or when they started officially recognizing June 12th, it was more of a symbolic thing because the current Republic of the Philippines, they trace their roots back to that revolution in 1896. Although, again, um, you're right. And during that time, during that revolution, Sulu and huge parts of Mindanao were never part of that colonization of the Spaniards. They tried, but they failed so many times to colonize Mindanao and Sulu. You can see, what do you call this? Siguro, if anything, just a few cities, or not even cities, few forts like Zamboanga that they were able to
Zamboanga, yeah,
colonize, but not
yeah.
the whole thing. So you're right. When we declared our independence in 1898 on June 12th, it wasn't including, it wasn't, or the people in Sudan Mindanao were still free from colonialism. So it's a good question to reflect on how does that even, what does that even mean? What's the significance of that date for people in Mindanao and Sulu when they were not part of that history yet? Um, yeah, so I don't have a straight answer to the question, pero
Okay.
it's a good question for folks to reflect on. We don't have the same
It would be
experiences
good
throughout the
for,
Philippines, and in fact,
yeah,
even
it would
even
be,
in the whole even Mindanao, not Mindanao, even in Visayas and Luzon, um, even the whole revolution in Luzon and Visayas, they have a different experience because Luzon, or the revolution was stronger in Luzon at one point, and then Visayas had its own revolution. Even there's even like its own republic in the Visayas before they eventually became part of the unifier Philippines. So there's like different um, narratives that were overlooked when we focus just on the revolution that happened in Luzon. We forget that the people in the Visayas had their own resistance and revolution against the Spaniards. Although it's connected to the ones in Luzon, it's still a different experience. And same with the other parts of Luzon, like in Ifugao. They were never. It's like Mindanao. They were never really colonized by Spain, although Europeans love claiming on the world map that they own this land, but they don't control it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Even like in Sulu, they were never. I always say this: they were never conquered,
Yeah,
but they had agreement. Well, don't get me wrong; they had agreement, like in the past. Um,
yeah,
in fact, they only had like they never had sovereignty over over the Sulu Sultanate or Sulu in general. They only had what you call this thing uh, suzerainty. They only had
oh
suzerainty
yeah, yeah,
instead of sovereignty. And now, like talking about that, now it's gonna bring me to kind of saying when it comes to Sulu, there were two agreements, or
yeah,
one is treaty and the other one is agreement. The
yes,
Bates Treaty, and then the Kiram Carpenter agreements.
yeah,
That probably, um, I must say, I don't know, like, should I confess that after the current Kiram Carpenter agreement, that's when you would say, okay, probably the Sulu people, Tausug,
yeah,
and the surrounding people of Sulu, probably that's when they became like Filipinos eventually
yeah.
because of the agreement.
In a
So
way, yeah,
when it comes to the agreement, yeah, when it comes to the agreement, it's still debatable whether they really gave the sovereignty,
yes,
was it like a total sovereignty or whatever like that. It's still debatable because of probably translations and all these things.
yeah,
And it's so hard in the past that one would say one document would say like it's probably written in Arabic, and then the other one would be written in English. So
English, yeah,
there's always like the translation. Um, it's so difficult at that time, I'd say.
yeah,
And yeah, so I think that's there are two significant treaties, or let's say one is treaty and the other one is agreement. The Bates Treaty, and then the um, Kiram Carpenter Agreement.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so yeah, it's still for me. It's kind of c- you know, it's not that I'm confused still, but when it comes to Araw ng Kalayaan, it's always like a question in my head. But hopefully um, there will be some of our viewers at the moment. They can enlighten us as well as to how
yeah,
they um, what's
yeah,
their perception about it. So
yeah.
hopefully,
That's a lot that we shared. So yeah, for
that's a
folks
lot. That's a lot.
watching us, comment.
Yeah,
How do you reflect on what we just talked about? Let us know what you think in the comments in the chat. So if you're on YouTube on the live chat, if you're on Facebook on the comments, so we can see it and we can highlight some of them. Yeah.
yeah,
So I guess it's always a question of, or I guess it's more of a reminder for a lot of Filipinos na um, these questions that you're asking yourself whenever Independence Day happens, Um,
Hmm.
these are questions that is common to a lot of Filipinos or a lot of people in the
Yeah.
Philippines, but not not like not in the I guess not in the mainstream. Like most Filipinos don't think about this because
Yeah.
they don't have that
Mhm.
same experience or same history in their local hometowns. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess for a lot of them, this is a new thing. Like, oh, I never thought about that before.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably like that. Yeah. Because as they say here, you're just following the mother goose.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah,
So yeah.
that's right.
Um. Yeah. And so I have a question.
Yeah,
Ano
sige, sige.
muna tayo?
Sige,
Segue
tanong
for
muna
you.
tayo.
Um. What made you kind of go into becoming a like what interests you to become a historian? And you
Oh,
studied in Harvard, didn't you?
yes.
Yeah. So
Um,
what brought you there?
or in just overall being a historian, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, actually has a lot to do with the Philippine American War and the Philippine Independence Day. Um,
Oh, okay.
so it started when I was a little kid, when I was around maybe 5 or 6 in Pampanga in Angeles City, where I was born.
Hmm.
That was in the 90s, no? So a lot of people are aware of the Pinatubo, the volcano erupting in the
Okay.
90s. And it was 1992, if I'm not mistaken, when it erupted. And it was, one of the world's worst volcanic eruption. And a lot of people in Central Luzon felt that it was the end of the world because a lot of our, hometowns are buried. And, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
our, and it happened throughout the next 5 years. Whenever there's a storm, whenever there's a typhoon, yung ashfall na binunggan ng Pinatubo, they would solidify and then babagyo, malalambot na naman, and they would like flood, and then it turns into a lahar that buried entire towns.
Yeah.
So I'm just giving you a context of the I guess of my upbringing or where I grew up in
Yeah.
Pampanga during that time. After nung yung 5 years nga nung yung childhood ko, most of it was really experiencing the aftermath of Pinatubo whenever there's again typhoon, may lahar na marami na nababaon. And so during that time, my grandma, grandma on my Kapampangan side, she was the what do you call this tourism officer of Angeles City. So
Okay.
she was in charge of the promoting tourism, but in a way, officially, it's to promote tourism in Angeles City beyond the red light district, to promote our
Yeah.
culture and our history. So so that's her official job. But in a way, their bigger job was to actually uplift the spirits ng mga Kapampangan because they needed something to celebrate. They needed something to hold on to, hope, to have hope na we can overcome this tragedy of Mount Pinatubo. So during her time as tourism officer, that's when a lot of the initiatives started in Pampanga, where even the famous like hot air balloon, that was a project. So all these things in Pampanga. But anyways, I'm saying this because when I was growing up, I was shadowing her. So she always took me to her meetings, to her office, and that's how I was exposed to a lot of the local history. A lot of the local history in Angeles. Like for example, our church was part of the Philippine American War as a hospital. It was also where the first anniversary of the Philippine Independence Day happened. So there was a church in my hometown where I was baptized, and then just down the street was the Pamintuan Mansion, which used to be the seat of the first Philippine Republic. So all these things for me when I was a kid, like, oh, these are all interesting stories about these old buildings that I just passed by every day. But not everyone was aware of it. So not even Kapampangas were aware of it. Because it's not in the textbooks. It's not taught in the schools. Because so I guess what I'm trying to say is that growing up, the textbooks, the school system in the Philippines always talk about the Philippine Revolution against Spain, but it's focused on what's happening in Manila or the Tagalog regions. So I was like,
Correct.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of history in my hometown alone that even in that during that 1890s alone that is not being taught in schools. So that's how I got really interested into history. Like, oh my God, there's so many things that I can explore and discover or rediscover because they were never gone. They're just there. So that's what. So yun, I guess yun ang inspire sa akin na maging historian is because of my exposure to that local history that I did not see. Hindi ko nakita sa school system, hindi ko nakita sa mga textbooks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. This is amazing, and you kept the enthusiasm. I can really see it on your videos. You know, you're kind of really
Yeah.
into it. You know,
Thanks.
so yeah, and when I was, let's say, how did I discover you? Like
Oh yeah, how?
your videos and everything like that. Um, for me, I was actually looking on YouTube, you know, all the histories and with the algorithms and all these things, you know, your video popped up.
Oh cool,
And
thanks. Thanks,
yeah,
algorithm.
uh, exactly, exactly. First thing was like I was looking at Kings and Generals. When I
Oh
was
yeah,
watching Kings
I
and
followed that channel.
Generals, yeah, it's amazing channel. Um, yeah, I was able to find more stuff about like European history,
Yeah,
and and then went into whenever they say about his European history, they will always say that in the past, you know, the Muslim history, the caliphates, the Ottoman, and all these guys in the past, the empires, the Roman
yeah,
empires, the Byzantine Empire, you know, all these things, and and then uh, obviously whenever I kind of look at Philippine history,
yeah.
Sulu Sultanate history, and all these things, your video, you know, like all of a sudden, who is this guy? And then there's so many videos, very informative in fairness.
Yeah.
And I was looking, oh, this guy is not a biased um,
Thanks.
YouTuber, historian, and all these things. You're just saying it plainly. Oh, this is what happened in the past and all these things, and you're not covering up something, which is
Thanks.
like very good, you know, like oh my goodness. And I kept following you. I kept like looking, watching your videos, and there's so many videos about Sulu that you're kind of saying, okay, you're making, you're educating people, you're educating Filipinos,
Yeah.
and I became like very interested. That's why I got in touch with you, and good thing, luckily, you were saying, oh yeah, and then not only that, one of the when I was kind of looking, trying to dig in more about yourself, and I saw, oh, you're also a Datu. So, and I was like, oh, Datu. I remember I was saying it there before that
Oh yeah, yeah.
is he a son of one of my uncles
Oh
or
yeah, in
something
this
like
video.
that? I was like, what? You know, and and then um and then you said, oh, your background, you're a Kapampangan, you're like in the past. Kapampangans are the most of the Kapampangans before they were like part of the royalties
Yeah,
or the people who fought against
yeah,
Spaniards. So, like, when it comes to that being a Datu, a descendant of all those
yeah.
fighters and leaders in the past in your place, um, can you expound more? Maybe tell us about how, like, what's the story, as they say it in art? What's the story about that? You know, tell us a little bit more.
I guess the question is about a bit more about the datus in Papanga. Is that is that?
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Tell us about it because I'm curious about it,
Yeah,
and obviously you and my bloodline, my ancestors probably they have um they knew each other probably in the
yeah,
past. Yeah. So
yeah.
let us
We did know each
yeah
other in the past.
yeah in the
So
past, yeah.
so
Okay.
I guess that's one thing that a lot of Filipinos nowadays are not familiar with how they've all again the majority of Filipinos in Luzon and maybe even the Visayas, but mostly Luzon, that they always think of Sulu and Mindanao as something that is distant, as something that is that is even foreign at some point. Like we don't know what they don't understand the culture and stuff, but they forget
Mhm.
that they've forgotten that in the past nakalimutan nila na Luzon and Mindanao and Sulu have always been, in the Visayas, they were always like interacting with each other. There's always a connection with each other. And to a point that the rulers of Luzon, Manila, and Pampanga, particularly, were intermarried with the royal families of Sulu, Brunei, and Maguindanao.
Mm.
So they forget that there's all of these relationships that existed before then. Even in the culture, there's a lot of words that we share in Kapampangan and Tausug, in Bahasa
Yeah,
Sug.
yeah.
So a lot of people forget that we have that. Even that Muslim history in Manila and Pampanga and parts of Central Luzon, and even Southern Luzon, that there were communities that were Muslim when the Spaniards arrived. But yeah, that's one thing that a lot of people forget.
But do you know each other even up to now? Like, do you
Oh,
know? Yeah, when it comes to
yes,
your bloodlines, and
yeah,
do you know each other? Do they know each other? Your
yeah.
elderlies, and how is it? Yeah,
So a lot of when we talk if they know each other, they do. A lot of the elders actually know each other. There's still elders, especially in the older families in Pampanga. They still know who's who. They still know who's descendant of whom. In fact, there's even like a saying, or like a concept in Pampanga that, um, in other countries, upper class is usually the people with money. So
yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah.
Pampanga culture, a lot of the elders are always saying, like, in Kapampangan culture, the upper class are not really the ones with money. Are the ones they're the ones who had, or are, they're the ones who have this, what do you call this long line of contribution to society, yung pagtulong nila sa komunidad. That was like, that's more of a standard of who's part of the upper or the elite in Pampanga. That's always been a concept that our elders have always said. Like, it doesn't matter how rich you are or how poor you are, your family's history matters more. And then if you look at all of these families in Pampanga, a lot of Kapampangan families and clans actually have roots in the pre-colonial nobility and royalty in the Philippines that people have forgotten. But yeah, going back to your question, if they knew, a lot of the elders knew. So a lot of the elders knew. It's sad that the younger generation don't are not really aware of it. For example, when I was growing up, when I was a little kid, siguro ng mga sa elementary or maybe first grade, second grade, ganun. I grew up hearing it. I grew up with the stories. I grew up with the histories, but I never
Okay.
really took it seriously. I never really took it seriously. I always think that my grandma was just being poetic because
Oh
I
yeah, yeah,
what's happening.
yeah.
I think we were talking about um there was like a cousin brought it up, or was it a cousin or a younger uncle who brought it up, that why are Kapampangans mayabang? That was the conversation. Why is the stereotype about Kapampangans mayabang? And then so we were just talking as little kids, and then my lola was just walking by, and then she just casually said that, oh, kasi, or I was gonna say Kapampangan, but I'll just say it in English. Oh, kasi, or because when we were descendants of the royalty. We were descendants of kings and princes. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, she's being poetic. She's being
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
metaphorical. Now,
yeah.
yeah, sure, we have noble blood. And it wasn't really when I got a little bit older, when I dug to the local history of Pampanga, that I found, books that, like, oh, that's my
Legit.
ancestor in the book.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's amazing that when I was in elementary at that time, we were kind of reading books.
Yeah.
Aralin
Oh,
Panlipunan.
yeah, yeah. Sultans
Yeah,
of
remember
Sulu.
those books?
Yeah.
And some parts of the Aralin Panlipunan books, they would mention about Sultan, about Kiram. And as a child, you'd be like, oh, my surname is there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you'd be like, oh my goodness, huh? My surname is there. So you'd be somehow feeling like cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always read that. But when it comes to practice, yeah, people in when I was growing up, um, people would obviously, if they know that you are a datu
Yeah.
in that part of the Philippines, they will respect you, even though you're like a small child, or like, if
Yeah. Yeah.
they will still
Yeah.
respect you. It comes with that, the datu, because when I
Yeah.
was growing up, uh, obviously at that time, the elderlies, they still have that notion, they still have that experiences about royalties in the
Yes.
past.
Yeah.
So it's still within them.
It's still there. Yeah.
And um, people would, I would say, when it comes to traditions in during that time, uh, my aunties, my uncles, and my dad and all these guys, whenever somebody is going to visit us, it's been like a tradition wherein they will kiss the hands of
Oh yeah.
our
Yeah.
my aunties,
Yeah.
my uncles and all these things. And I was like, as a child, I was looking, oh, how come they're like kissing their,
Yeah.
like the guys who were kissing were like older than my aunties and aunts,
Yeah.
and my aunties and aunts, they would take it
They're not
away.
used to it.
Yeah, they would take it. They take their hands away, and
Yeah.
then, but the people were like, oh, they will
Yeah.
kiss. But that's kind of the tradition in the Pacific culture. They will kiss the hands, um, and then yeah, they do respect them like a lot. As in, like for me as a child growing up at that time, I was just kind of, oh, that's cool, but it really never got into my head really at that time. But having said that, uh, there was this an incident when I was a kid. Um, Probably I was like um, grade three,
Oh, okay.
something like that. If
Yeah.
I can tell a story about that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Share that.
I was grade three at that time, and you know what happened? I had a classmate, and my classmate was kind of bullied by another classmate of mine, and I stood up for him, and I fought with the guy, with
Yeah.
the bully guy, and
Yeah.
then when I fought with the bully guy, what happened there? Well, my classmate who got bullied, he was crying, and the guy that I fought with, the following day, he was out sick. He
Oh,
didn't turn up in school at that time.
absent.
Yeah, and and then they were saying, they were like rumors. My classmates were saying, oh, because he fought with a Datu, because apparently in the past, if you fight against a royal blood, something like that, um,
Oh.
there will be like a curse, you
Yeah.
know. There will be like something's gonna happen to you. So that's why, no, no,
That's
no, no, don't fight with
interesting.
the Datu. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how our culture, traditions in the Philippines in general, we have all these myths, we have all
Yeah.
these, as you're always like showing on your channel, which is like interesting. There's always like something like that, and yeah. But anyway, the kid that I fought with, he
Is he
he kind
okay?
of, I was like, okay, he was okay, he was okay. We were fighting, it wasn't like a serious fight. It was just like pushing him, basically. That's it. So um he never got sick because of the fight. It's just that
Yeah.
he got like bulutong. So
Okay.
like a chicken pox. He
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
bulutong. That's why he wasn't able to come in the next day. But it has become somehow like a myth, like, oh, never, never ever fight with Datu Don, because with
Yeah.
there might be something. But yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything like in your plan, I suppose, that like a tradition that you do, um, or is there anything that your ancestors would do when it comes to like being royalties in the past?
Uh-huh. Uh, I guess you brought something that I also kind of experienced growing up. Like I was always like when I was a little kid, I was always like confused. I guess wwhy do
Okay.
they like older Kamampangan families, have so much respect for my family when we're not even rich, because I did not grow up rich. I was in the middle, maybe middle class or upper middle class. I had a comfortable life, but I wasn't super rich. But
Yeah,
growing
yeah.
up, I have this, like, I have experiences, ginagalang yung mga elders namin, even though they're not in positions of power, they're not politicians, they're not, pero there's still always this, like, respect, even from politicians, even from people who actually control the power politically in the Pampanga province. There's always this, like, confusion as a little kid, like, why, it only clicked when I started, realizing, oh, there's this deeper history that even the older families in Pampanga are aware of, or are still aware of. um I hope that made sense. Pero yun nga, may mga
Yeah.
instances when I was growing up that I never really understood until I put it together. Like, oh, okay, because of the longer or the deeper history of the families, in their contributions to the society. Um, yeah, because a lot of them, I guess, if anything, a lot of the families too, especially on at least I'll just speak from my own lineages. A lot of them, even though
Yeah.
they're not in political power, they still found ways, or it's like more of a what do you call this, like an automatic setting for us to help the community,
Mm,
regardless of what positions we have in the community, regardless if we're
mm,
just, an ordinary citizen. There's always that pressure. It's actually more of a pressure than a responsibility, a pressure of being responsible, to the community, even if you're not in the actual positions, current political positions. So I guess that's something that we inherited from generations of being, leaders of the community in Pampanga. Yeah, so, or Central Luzon, actually. So a lot of it, yeah, is I'm not sure how to explain it, pero yun nga, nung lumalaki ako, or when I was growing up in Pampanga, there's a lot of these things that it did not make sense when I was a little kid. Like,
mm.
bakit ang taas ng tingin nila when we're, I'm technically, sometimes I'm poor, mas mahirap ako sa'yo, bakit ang taas ang tingin niyo sa amin, yung gano'n. But then again, that was when I did not, put the history yet together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's only now that when you're grown up, you
Yeah,
were able to pick up the pieces, the puzzles
yeah,
all together. Yeah, same as myself. Probably here's the thing, right? As I said it earlier on, that if you're in that situation, if you're um, experiencing that, you don't really, it's not really registering at that
yeah,
time.
yeah, when you're
It's
a
kind
kid.
of like you're just doing what you're being told and you're just doing whatever you can do.
Yeah,
It's only when you become um, like an adult,
yeah,
and that's when you kind of say, you'll go back and then you'll find your history. You'll find,
yeah,
oh, how come in the past, okay, it makes sense now, because they were doing this, they were doing that,
yeah,
and because they were part of this, they were part of that. Okay. So
yeah,
that is why I myself, I was so curious about my history. I know I knew some stuff,
yeah,
but it's not really like, oh, okay, I knew about it.
yeah.
And having said that, right, if I can share something about 2015, that's when I kind of really kind of looking online
Uh-huh.
and saying, I was typing something, and then there came out Sulu Sultan, and I typed something like Sulu history, something like
Mm.
that, right?
Yeah,
And Sulu Sultan Ismail Kiram. Um, it says there on the thing, on the
yeah,
Google search. And I was trying to um, click that, but I can't see, not unless you have to kind of subscribe. So it happened to
oh
be
yeah, yeah,
the
that's the
New
page.
York Times magazine, online magazine, New York Times magazine, basically. So that was in 2015. And well, obviously, I was so curious. I subscribed. You have to subscribe, in order to view that. And luckily, it was a legit. So I had a subscription of the New York Times magazine archive. So I found out so much things about Sulu history, and obviously Mindanao, and all about this like a really well documented um, stories, in the
Yeah.
past. It's a
Yeah.
paper basically, but it's a digitalized. And yeah, I found out that there are so many um, things that happened in the past that confirmed that. For
Oh,
me, it's like my question about
yeah.
Sulu in general. Uh, Before, for me, it was just a hearsay. But then
Yeah.
eventually, when I read all the the, the documents, basically the archive, I was like, oh my goodness, it was for real. So um, when it happened really during the time of Sultan Jamalul Kiram II. So
Yeah.
all these things, the happenings, this it happened. All the writings, obviously, from 1800s. Uh, it's become like people probably were traveling easier at that time, right? And then for 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 Americans at that time, it was like an easier access for them.
Yeah.
So they're always in contact with the Sulu Sultan. They're always in Sulu at that time, and probably some of them are telegraph or something like that. But now with this documentations, it will only prove that yes, Americans were in Sulu at that time. They were very interested. They were trying to kind of invade probably
Yeah.
at that time, and that brings us to um, the Filipino American War.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like with the Filipino American War, do you think in history, um, is it really kind of how relevant it is when it comes to Philippine Independence Day? You mentioned it earlier, but we're just trying to kind of you know say more. If you can say more about the Philippine, yeah, because the July 4th, the dates and everything like that. Um,
Yeah.
do you think it's more significant to say, um, yeah, it has to be like the Independence Day has to be like post American War, like
Yeah.
for the Sulu people.
Yeah.
Um, well, I'm just basing it from the dates. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, well, this I guess just to give more context then on how different countries have different ways of celebrating Independence Day. They have different
okay.
ways of distinguishing what's Independence Day for them. Like, for example, in the United States, when they're on July 4th, Independence Day is actually not the day that they became independent, but it's really the day when they said like, oh, we want to be independent. So I guess that was the reasoning for like part of the reasoning why Makapagal and the other politicians back then decided like why we should do it on June 12th because that's when we said that we want to be independent, that we're going to
Mm,
be
mm,
independent. Because if you look at other countries, even Mexico, Mexico, like the ones I mentioned in the video, Mexico, Brazil, the United States, when they declared their independence, they were not really technically independent yet. So I guess for
mm,
in terms of the Philippine American War, sure it happened, but before then we were really we wanted to become independent, and we declared to the world that we're independent. There's a lot of like ceremonies that they did just to declare that or proclaim that the Philippines was independent. But yeah, again, it doesn't apply to Sulu and Mindanao when they were not
doesn't
part of that
apply. Yeah.
revolution. They were not part of that
Mm,
that first republic.
mm, mm. But it's
you know
amazing that
yeah.
at that time, Sulu, they've always like for them in the past, they like Sulu is not part of the Philippines at that time.
Yeah.
Technically at that time, it's not
Yeah.
part. That's why the Americans went to Sulu, persuaded the Sultan in order for the Sultan to join the Philippines,
Yeah.
because that's part of, um, I would say, colonizing as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Colonizing at that time by the Americans. Is that
Yeah.
the proper way of saying it? Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
discovered that anyway in the papers, and how they went to Sulu, the Americans at that time. In fact, when the Americans went to Sulu at that time, um, they they don't call, um, like the guys from down south. They don't call them, the Americans don't call them Filipinos.
Yeah.
There's a specific, I'd say I will be forwarding this to you sometime anyway.
Yeah.
There's a specific, article. There's an article there specifically, describing when they met the Suluans. They called them before, Moro, if not Mohoro, Mohammedan. They
Oh
call
yeah.
them
Yeah. Yeah.
Moro or
Yeah.
Mohammedan. You
Yeah. I
remember that?
remember reading that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, they describe, oh, they are different from the Filipinos. They look different from the Filipinos. Their aura in
Yeah.
general. They were saying, they was describing them. So as if it's a different person or people, altogether. And, I was reading it, and I was like, oh my God, it's like, it's amazing how, like in the past, when they were able to discover, or not discover, but like to deal, when they were dealing with, Suluans or
Yeah.
Tausugs in the past.
Yeah.
They don't call them Tausugs anyway. They call them Moro Mohammedans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, they don't even call them Muslims. They just call them,
Yeah.
things like that. And but the the article was amazing. And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, they even yeah again even like just like the Spaniards, they didn't know what to call the people, so they just
what to call the
came up
people.
with terms that they think would be appropriate, but not really. I guess you mentioned how how the Americans negotiated with the Sultan of Sulu when they
Yeah,
first came to colonize the Philippines. A lot of people are not aware that the Americans are actually they were scared of of what of basically Sulu and Mindanao, that while they're busy fighting in Luzon, they were scared that Sulu and Mindanao would also like form a bigger resistance that would stop them from actually effectively controlling the Philippines, because in their head they bought the Philippines. The thing is, it's funny because this when they sold the Philippines, when they ceded the Philippines to from the Spaniards to the Americans, it entailed the whole archipelago, even though Spaniards don't have a don't technically
yes,
have a you know they don't rule in Mindanao or Sulu, but they sold it anyway. So in the head of the Americans, like they owned it. So they were like, okay, while we're
mm,
fighting, while we're busy fighting in the zone, they were actually scared that Sulu and Mindanao would form a bigger resistance. So they're like, okay, siguro, let's. It was actually a delay tactic too. So if you look
mm,
at the
mm,
history of Sulu and Mindanao, while the Americans were fighting in Luzon, the Philippine American War was happening in Luzon. They negotiated with the rulers in Sulu and also in Mindanao, to to have that those treaties. But then afterwards, after they were done fighting in Luzon, they suddenly turned their guns in Mindanao and Sulu to do the same thing.
yeah,
So in a
yeah,
way, they what do you call this, betrayed the rulers or the people of Sulu and Mindanao, because they said they were going to respect your autonomy and stuff, your freedom. Yet after they're done killing people in Luzon and the Visayas, they turned their guns to Mindanao.
Mindanao, yeah, 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 and then they were able to get this, treaty, Bates Treaty or
Yeah,
Kasunduang Bates, and all these things.
yeah,
And with the Kasunduang, what the articles that I've read from this New
yeah,
York Times, they're all there. The
yeah,
Bates Treaty, and how they were. Um, it's all laid out. It's very interesting. And talking about that, um, most likely they respected the Sulu Sultan in the past.
Yeah.
Um, that's why they were not able to just kind of say, "Hey, we're
Yeah.
taking your lands." What they did was to talk to the Sultan, as you were saying it there. Um, they were like saying, "Oh, maybe let's be friends with the Sultan," and then
Yeah.
later on, we'll point the gun. Something like that. Um, but as a person who is part of this family, of this clan, I'm just like when I read it, I was like, oh my goodness, huh? It really happened. Because for me in the past, I just heard it, but there was no written documentation that it
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
Only when I read it in like 2015.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I did after this, because I was saying, oh my goodness, I read one of the articles I've read that the Sulu Sultan went to New York in 1910. So he went to New York. So I said, oh, maybe we'll go and find like where did he go, and what happened there. There
Yeah.
was a particular building in New York at that time,
Oh
in
yeah.
1910. That was the tallest building,
Yeah.
and that's the New York. It's called Times Building in the
Yeah.
past,
Yeah.
but now it's New York Times Building.
Yeah.
So it used to be the tallest in the square. So what I
Yeah.
did, I went there, and when I went there, I went up. It's actually a shop now. It used to be probably like a, you know, I don't know what was in there. Like a probably it's the paper, the New
Oh,
York
yeah. New
Times.
York Times.
Yeah, probably it's like that. But
Yeah.
now it's like it's just a shop, a grocery shop, something like that. But I actually went in
Yeah.
and I walked up, and as I was walking up, I I had goosebumps because of the things that I've read. So I read that, oh, he went up the building, and I was like feeling it. It's funny, like, I was feeling it. I was like, oh my goodness, this is how. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it,
Because
got it.
you knew, or because you knew
Yeah,
your ancestor was there. Your ancestor,
yeah,
you're
exactly,
basically like
exactly. That's my
the same footsteps as your ancestor.
same footsteps. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I felt, and I was like, okay, and yeah, but probably have you anything to say more about the Kalayaan while we're gonna take a break, probably, or something like for the viewers.
Yeah.
Is there any questions out there, guys, that
Yeah.
you'd like
Again,
to?
yeah. If you have any question, although the topic today is revolving around this Independence Day or Kalayaan, um, we can also discuss anything. Or I guess what we're trying to say is that let's not. It's not limited to just Independence Day, the questions
Yes,
that we're
yeah,
gonna answer. But
yeah,
looking from that lens, like again, the history, for example, we've been talking about the history of Mindanao and Sulu. That's still part of the whole bigger narrative of how we became independent and how what's the meaning of this independence. Um, yeah, so we can still answer questions or highlight some comments later on. Um, but yeah, I just want to remind everyone that the history of the Philippines is not what do you call this? It's not as simple as the textbooks tells us.
yeah,
There's nothing there. The Spaniards came, civilized us, and then the Americans came, freed us from the Spaniards, and then there's the Philippine Republic and Revolution, things like that. But it's more complicated and has more nuances that or maraming bahagi nito na are worth looking or worth worth to reflect on. And yeah, sige. Do you have any like questions for the audience to think about while if we're gonna take a maybe like a few minutes break since we've been
yeah.
on for
Okay.
an hour and a half.
Yes, yeah. Probably I'm gonna make a coffee or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's afternoon here, you know.
Oh yeah.
And it's morning there.
Yes.
So yeah, it's amazing how the internet has brought us into this,
Yeah.
doing live stream, and at least you like for yourself, um, you'll be able to answer directly if there's any questions down below.
Yeah.
And as we are approaching the 124th Independence Day, Philippine Independence Day, yeah, we're just kind of informally talking about history here, guys, and give us some comments there down below, questions and all these things, and
Yes.
don't forget to like and subscribe this
Oh yeah.
video.
Promote your channel too.
Subscribe. Oh yeah, before I forget, if you're interested in looking at what's happening in Ireland and some parts of the world as well, go visit Mr. and Mrs. K, as in Mr. and Mrs. K, as in K. It's a lifestyle video vlog, whatever
Yeah.
you call it, vlog, or
I'll,
basically it's a travel video, sort of something like that.
yeah.
And we also have a podcast. Tara, let's talk.
Ah, your
That's good.
podcast. It's on Spotify too, right?
It's on Spotify as well. It's on YouTube. We're just
Yeah.
actually starting about, we're just started the Tara Let's Talk.
Yeah.
I have some videos there, but we're only starting that podcast. But generally, the podcast is about um, working abroad,
Yeah.
how we're coping up, parenting, and how
Yeah.
we are, and then eventually we'll be like talking. We will be guesting you as well there.
Yes.
So, and yeah, we'll be talking to interested or interesting people, I must say, and we're hoping that those guys that we'll be talking to will be able to impart some knowledges to you. So
Yeah.
we're kind of looking forward to having that. Okay, in
Yeah.
the meantime, I'm gonna go and make some coffee.
Yes.
So
Yes. Good. Oh yeah.
I'll be
So
right back.
we can take a quick break and we'll be right back. So for folks who are watching us, thanks for watching us. For joining us still. Yeah. So just type your comments, type your questions. We'll answer them when we get back. And yeah, we'll do a quick break. And while we're actually doing a quick break, I'll play a video that's kind of still related to our topic. It's about
Yes,
the
perfect.
national anthem. One of my most
Great,
controversial videos. But yeah, I also
lovely.
by the way, I linked your channel in the comments in the chat. So
Thank
for
you very
folks, the
much.
channel is linked there. Just click on it and subscribe.
Lovely.
Alam mo ba na ang orihinal na letra o lyrics sa Lupang Hinirang ay hindi naman talaga Tagalog at hindi rin ito Kastila? Teka, paano naman nangyari yun? Wait lang, if you do not speak or understand Tagalog, check out the links up here or down below for the older English version of this video. And do not forget to hit the subscribe button. Now back to our topic. Mabuhay o sa Kapampangan, luwid kayo! Ngayong June 12, 2020 ang ika-122 taon mula nang ideklara ang kalayaan ng Pilipinas sa Kawit Cavite noong 1898. Noong unang ipinatugtog sa publiko ang ating national anthem. Ngunit, lingid sa kaalaman ng marami, ang Lupang Hinirang o national anthem na inaawit natin ngayon ay hindi naman talaga ang orihinal na version nito. Una sa lahat, ang isang anthem ay isang musical composition upang ipagdiwang ang isang mahalagang bagay, gaya ng national identity at ang kalayaan ng isang bansa. Noong November 1896, dahil na rin sa kahilingan ni Gat Andres Bonifacio, ay isinulat ni Juan Nakpil ang marangal na dalit ng Katagalugan bilang national anthem sa kasagsagan ng himagsikan o revolusyon para sa ating kalayaan. At noong June 12, 1898, sa ilalim ng pamumuno ni Emilio Aguinaldo apektado ay wala naman talagang letra o lyrics ang ating national anthem. Ang ipinatugtog nila noon ay ang Marcha Filipina, isang nakamamanghang musical composition upang ipagdiwang ang araw ng ating kalayaan. Ito'y ikinompose ni Julian Felipe noong 1898 para sa proklamasyon ng ating kalayaan. Ito'y base sa French national anthem, ang La Marseillaise, at sa Marcha Real ng Espanya. Ang Tagalog version ng Lupang Hinirang na ating inaawit ngayon ay mula lamang sa taong 1966 at ito'y ibinase sa Tulang Pilipinas na isinulat ni Jose Palma noong 1899. Ang Tulang Pilipinas ni Jose Palma ay isinulat naman sa wikang Kastila. Pero alam mo ba na kahit ang Tulang Pilipinas ni Jose Palma noong 1899 ay hindi rin ang original na version nito. Isinulat ni Jose Palma ang Tulang Pilipinas o Tierra Adorada noong August 1899. At ito'y base naman sa isa pang mas matandang tula na isinulat noong September 1898, halos isang taon bago ang tula ni Jose Palma. At ang orihinal na tula na siyang nilikha para sa musika ng Marcha Filipina ay isinulat naman ng isa sa aking mga ninuno. Ito'y isinulat ni Mariano Proceso Pabalan y Byron, isang dakilang Pilipinong revolusyonaryo na mula sa dugong Kapampangan, Aita, Irish at Portuguese. Si Pabalan ng Bacolor, Pampanga ay isa sa pinakatanyag at matagumpay na manunulat sa kasaysayan ng Pilipinas. Dahil sa kanyang mga likha ay lubusang nagbago ang larangan ng teatro sa Pilipinas. Ito'y naging mas makabayan at mas Pilipino. Siya rin kasi ang nagsulat ng kauna-unahang sarswela ng ating bansa sa wikang sariling atin, na hindi sa wikang Kastila o wikang Banyaga. At noong September 1898, habang isinusulat ang saligang batas ng unang Republika ng Pilipinas ng Revolutionary Congress sa Malolos, Bulacan, ay isinulat ni Mariano Proceso Pabalan ni Byron ang makabayang tulang Labuad Mapalad upang ipagdiwang ang kalayaan ng Pilipinas mula sa mga mananakop. At ito'y kanyang isinulat sa kanyang mother tongue, ang wikang Kapampangan. At di kalaunan ang kanyang matalik na kaibigang si Jose Palma, na isa ding Pilipinong revolusyonaryong Kapampangan mula sa Bacolor, Pampanga, ay sadyang na-inspire sa tulang Labuad Mapalad ni Pabalan. Kaya naman ito'y kanyang isinalin sa wikang Kastila noong 1899 at saka naman ito inilapat sa musika ng Marcha Filipina. At kung ating aawitin at pakikinggang maigi ay masakma sa musika ng Marcha Filipina ang tulang Labuad Mapalad ni Pabalan kung ihahambing sa Spanish version nito na Filipinas ni Jose Palma. Kaya ating pakinggan sa dulo ng video na ito ang rendition ng Labuad Mapalad na inawit ng Sapni ng Crisot Cultural and Literary Foundation. So make sure to watch until the very end. Kaya rin kung tutuusin, ang orihinal na pambansang awit ng Pilipinas ay unang isinulat sa wikang Kapampangan ng isang Pilipinong revolusyonaryong Kapampangan. At kung iisipin natin mabuti, matagal nang kinakanta o inaawit ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas sa iba't ibang wika ng ating bansa, bago pa man naging opisyal ang Tagalog version nito. At sa pagdating ng mga Amerikano ay pinagbawal ang anumang pagpapahayag at simbolong makabayan, kabilang na ang pagkanta ng ating pambansang awit. Noong 1938 naman, sa panahon ng Commonwealth of the Philippines, ay isinulat ang English version ng Tulang Pilipinas ni Palma. At ito'y tinawag na The Philippine Hymn. Sa kasagsagan naman ng World War II noong 1943 ay isinalin ng revolusyonaryong hukbong bayan o hukbalahap ang Labuad Mapalad ni Pabalan sa wikang Tagalog. At ito'y kanilang tinawag na Diwa ng Bayan. At mula 1948 hanggang 1960s ay meron pang ibang mga Tagalog translations o versions ng Labuad Mapalad ang isinulat. At noong 1966 lamang isinulat ang bersyon ng Lupang Hinirang na siyang inaawit natin ngayon. Ngunit, alam mo bang noong 1998 lamang ito isinabatas bilang official national anthem? At noong 1998 lamang din nagsimulang ipinagbawal ng batas ang pag-awit ng ating pambansang awit sa wikang hindi Tagalog o Filipino. Kaya naman, madalas maging kontrobersyal o viral sa tuwing ito'y aawitin sa ibang wika ng ating bansa. Ngunit kung ating titignan ang mismong kasaysayan ng ating pambansang awit, ito'y nagpapaalala sa atin sa kayamanan ng ating iba't ibang mga wika. kayamanan sa mga wika na sumasalamin din sa makulay at sari-saring kultura at mamamayan ng Pilipinas. Mahalagang kilalanin natin ang realidad na ang ating bansa ay diverse, multi-ethnic at multilingual. Pagkat ang mga katangingang ito'y dapat nating ipagyamanin at ipagdiwang. Ito'y kayamanan ng ating kapuluan na dapat nating ipagmalaki. Pagkat ang tunay na diwa, lakas at kagandahan ng ating inang bayan ay matatagpuan sa ating pagkakaisa. Pagkakaisa hindi lamang sa ilalim ng iisang wika, kundi sa ilalim ng makatarungang pagkilala at pag-unawa sa ating sari-sari ngunit magkakaugnay na ugat, karanasan, kasaysayan at kultura. Pagkakaisa kung saan ang lahat ay malaya at pantay-pantay. Isang malaya nagkakaisang sambayanan kung saan walang iwanan ano paman ang antas sa lipunan o wikang ginagamit. Kaya laging tandaan, know your roots at no history, no self. At hanggang dito na lamang muna sa ngayon. Huwag kalimutang mag-like, mag-share, mag-comment at mag-subscribe. At kung gusto nyo akong tulungan gumawa pa ng mas maraming video gaya nito, suportahan lamang ang aking Patreon o bumili ng aking libro. Maraming salamat po. O sa Kapampangan, dakal pong salamat. Hanggang sa muli, kita-kits o sa Kapampangan, Mikitix.
Labuan mapalad, mutyaning lalo sampat, ninday at malat, ake kami sa kwak. Budning sultana, ginunaning malasya, pemalenana, nintapang at sinta, karing batis bundok, kakenan ulwit, pulong dakal, bitas ang makalimbagan, iyang kekang katimawan, king bandera mong maningning, ate kutandaring taksil, kapilan man e kulimlim, ing Aldo na at ding batuin, laban ning Aldo sinta at epangan, mayuming diling keke kamyen. Yang ligayang kekeng panyang iyan, ikekakengan pa'y maten.
Cool. So I'm back while we wait for Don. If you have any questions regarding the video you just saw, about a little bit of a history, konting history ng national anthem, na untold history ng national anthem ng Pilipinas. Cool. Maybe magsha-shoutout muna ako ng mga nasa comment. Let's see. So someone, good evening kay Bon Homie with a cute dog picture. Good evening, watching from Negros Oriental. Wow, welcome. Yan. Ay, ano nangyari? Okay, we also have Christian Esterosa, Diyos maray nabanggi sa Gabos, or good evening sa inyong lahat from Bicol, mula kay Christian. Yan. So, just a few shoutouts. So, kung may gusto mag-shoutout dyan or bumate, let us know in the comments. Then, you don't have to ask a question. You can just comment to say hi and, baka may gusto kayong pabate, batiin while we're on. Okay, I guess our guest is back, I guess. Okay, yan. So, welcome back, kay Don.
I'm back.
Yeah, welcome back.
Marami palang nagko-comment na I couldn't.
Yeah.
Hindi ko nakikita.
Yeah.
So may mga chats and
yeah,
if you'd like to answer them.
Sige.
You can.
Let's see. There's a lot. Kasi I see comments on both Facebook and YouTube. So minsan sunod-sunod hindi ko na mabasa agad. Yeah.
Ang dami pala.
Yeah. Like, do you see the on the side ba? On your
yeah, here.
Okay.
Yeah, I was on a full. Oh yeah, now I can see them.
Sige, yan.
Because my wife was actually on the other side and
cool.
She was kind of doing something, but she said it to me. Oh, there are comments.
Oh yeah.
Maybe you guys can answer the comments.
Sige, sige. Oh, actually, fun fact, not aware. Your wife is has Kapampangan roots.
Yeah. I always tease her, "Oh, you're a commoner," but then I've seen one of her videos. It's you were saying it there that, oh, Pangilinan is
Yeah,
is one of the elites in the past.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's
Yeah.
the I guess just to share history of the Pangilinan last name. What do you
Hmm.
call this? So according to oral traditions, yung roots ng Pangilinan last name is the same roots as the Pamintuan last name. So there's actually two brothers. So one who became the political, who nagmana nung political responsibility, and he became the Pamintuan because Pamintuan means to be obeyed, the one that you should obey. That's what it means in
Yeah.
Old Kapampangan. And then Pangilinan is the one who should be kept sacred. So according to
Sacred. Yeah.
oral tradition, there's two sons. The elder one became the Pamintuan because he became the one who became the Datu, the ruler. And then
Oh.
the other brother became the Pangilinan because he was the one who kept the spiritual traditions. He became a priest. So
Yeah.
one is to be obeyed, the other one is to be kept sacred. So fun fact lang, saan nanggaling ang last name na Pangilinan?
That's amazing. Merong ano dyan, shout out. Jan Suva, hi po. Don
Oh,
Kiram.
yan, yan,
Jan
yan.
Suva. Hello. Kumusta po?
Yan.
Oh.
I'm not sure if you can also see the starred comment because I starred them if we can go back to it. This sa kabilang side next to the live comments. Can you see it?
I can see the live comments here, yes.
Okay.
And it says, somebody here, Kasmir Yusuf. Assalamualaikum.
Oh yeah, si Casimir.
Uh,
Suki natin yan, si Casimir.
that's good. That's good. I'm enjoying it here, Kirby.
Thank you. Welcome. I'm glad you are
Yeah.
enjoying this live stream.
Yeah, it has to be. Me and my wife, we had the live stream before. That was during the lockdown.
Oh, that's
And the
cool.
first lockdown. It wasn't on our channel, but the what do you call this thing? The Filipinos in Ireland before, we had this Halloween. I
Yeah.
don't know, laging parang Halloween lagi ang
Yeah.
napupunta sa amin. The consul, the consulate in our like, Filipino consulate in Ireland asked us to host the Halloween para sa mga bata and all these things.
Yeah.
So we did it. We were like 3 hours and a bit.
Yeah.
We were like entertaining. We were basically hosting anyway. We were talking to the Filipinos in Ireland. They were like serenading. They were doing all these things, and that's what we were doing. And this is my second time around to talk to someone over the internet. And yeah, I must say I'm enjoying, especially with the comments. You have a very huge you have a huge following, I'd say, and I guess a lot of people are very interested in yeah.
May nagre-request si JD. Or no, not, JD saying, ito pala, JD said, shout out to Ireland from the UK. So, just across the pond.
Oh yeah, yes, JD. Shout out JD. And just visit. Can Don Kiram speak English?
Ayan,
with
yung request.
Irish accent?
wanna
Yeah,
hear
no,
this.
what you're hearing at the moment, it's a kind of a hybrid Filipino Filipino Irish accent.
Yeah.
It's a hybrid basically. So yeah, but here's the thing about when you're talking to Irish people, when you're talking to them, you'll be talking the same way as they were talking. So if I talk the way they are talking, you won't be able to understand.
Yeah.
So instead of understand, you would say understand. So it's like for you, it would be like really foreign.
Yeah.
Because the Irish accent is so difficult, and you'd end up not understanding what they were saying. Basically, it was like for me, as somebody who came here before, I've even questioned myself: do I know how to speak English?
Mm-hmm.
Because for them, it's hard. It's hard for them to understand me, and it's hard for me to understand them. But it's just that the accents.
Yeah.
When it comes to accents, even in America, when you go to America, you guys have different accent, and then
Yeah.
the Filipino Americans have your own accent as well.
Yeah.
So here, the Irish Filipinos, we have our accent as well at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, and instead of and, you would say and, So like for me, I'm saying and
Yeah.
instead of and. It's just that's the way it is. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I guess that's a reminder for people, for the viewers, that accents are there's no such thing as the correct or the right accent when it comes to languages. It's just
yes,
the way you speak
yeah,
in a certain part of the world. So
correct,
don't
yeah.
be ashamed of your
But
Filipino accent.
oh, don't be ashamed of your Filipino accent, exactly, because even English speaking people, they would have their own accents. Even here in Ireland
Hmm.
itself, if you go from one place to another place, they have their own accents as well. And if you go to England, in
Hmm.
England,
Yeah,
they have their own accents as well. Even
yeah,
in America,
yeah,
Americans have their own accent as well. So
yeah.
yeah,
There's different, yeah, different accents. Let's see. There was a couple of greetings from earlier that I wanna highlight and bring up. Asan na yun? Nawala. Nawala siya. Sorry. Again, see. Ano daw, Mapia, watching from General Santos City. God bless you sa lahat. Thank you. Kay Oy Metra Lopez. Ayan. Okay, so what should we talk about now?
so yeah,
Medyo,
yeah, yeah, how about when it comes to celebrating in
mm,
America, how do you celebrate Philippine Independence Day in America?
oh, dito.
Yes.
Yeah,
How do you and I will share as well
yeah,
how we celebrate.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Your experience, please.
So from my experience here, there's some different cities in the U.S. have different you call this what do you call this different Filipino communities in the U.S. have different ways of celebrating it. Sometimes there's parades. Sometimes the consulates are also involved in the parade. Um, and since I live in a or I lived in Davis for over Davis is a small college town next to Sacramento. Sacramento is the capital of California.
Okay.
It's the college town where I studied and eventually worked on campus. So I lived in a very small college town. So we didn't have those parades. We didn't have those celebrations. But in some places, they have parades. They have what do you call this? Have just recently Sacramento had their own like parang fair where they had different Filipino vendors, Filipino artists selling art, food.
Okay.
So meron mga parang maliliit na fiesta na nangyayari. So it's different per city or per community. So again, there's different. San Francisco has a huge. Although San Francisco's Pistahan festival happens in more in August, if I'm not mistaken. But they do have that too, and then LA has their own like festival that happens in September. So that it doesn't usually coincides with Independence Day, but the celebration is still there.
All right. Perfect. Yeah. Because I guess a lot of your viewers, I'd say,
Mm,
they're in the Philippines at the moment, and
yeah,
yeah, well, they're from different places, but mostly from the Philippines. And they were like the our kababayans. They
yeah,
also would want to kind of say they want to picture out how do we celebrate Philippine Independence Day in our own
yeah,
places, in
yeah.
each countries. So here in Ireland, we don't have we have a consulate, but we
Mm-hmm.
don't have what to call this thing, a proper, as in, um, we have a consulate, but it's not. How do you say that? Yung in the Philippines,
Yeah,
in America, there's a Philippine embassy, right? Like
Yeah.
here in London, there's a Philippine embassy, but we don't have an embassy here in
Oh, in
Ireland.
Ireland. Mm.
So, but we have a consulate, and from time to time,
Yeah.
we have a good relations with myself and my wife. We have a good relations with the consulate here in Ireland, and as I said before, if there's something Filipino like occasion, event, or something like that,
Mhm,
we
mhm.
get to be in contact with them,
Mhm, mhm.
and we kind of tend to attend if obviously if we're available.
Yeah.
And obviously here if you're working, if you're living abroad, time is like so difficult when it comes to, like, if especially if you have family, if you have
Yeah.
kids, and your priority is obviously the kids.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, of
like it's
course.
you know it's so hard to say, okay, we get time for it anyway. You know yourself, it's so
Mhm, mhm.
difficult, time wise. But yeah, we have a good relationship with the consul. I must say that.
Yeah.
Uh, so what we do here, we celebrate them. There's always this groups of Filipinos in Ireland,
Yeah.
um, big groups in Ireland. So they do organize. They
Mhm.
organize the Independence Day. It may not be exactly on the 12th of June,
Yeah.
right? It could be like 11th of June. It could be like 10th of June, just to accommodate obviously the working Filipinos.
Mhm.
And yeah, we tend to attend if we can. And what we did before in the past, we have some videos actually on our
Yeah.
channel, Mr. and Mrs.
Check it
K.
out.
Yeah. So we attended. We always attend if we can, and a lot of Filipinos. Well, the usual thing,
Mhm.
if you're abroad, with living abroad, there will be something like when it comes to food and all these things, and they will be bringing
Yeah.
food, and sometimes, or the last time, they did it in a hotel, so we just went there. But when it comes to food, there are Filipinos here. They do they cook
Mhm.
the food. The main food was provided by the hotel, obviously, but the
Okay. Yeah.
desserts, it has to be like a Filipino dessert.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what we were doing. And usually we have like programs, and the singing is always there.
Yeah.
And shout out to Wendell. He's one of our good Filipino friend here
Mhm.
in Ireland. He's always in the consulate. So shout out Wendell. He's a very good singer, and is a very dedicated guy.
Mhm.
And obviously shout out to our consul Garrett. Um, if you're watching, hopefully you are watching. You better be.
Hopefully.
So yeah, and yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we contribute as much as we can, when it
Mhm,
comes to
mhm. Yeah.
entertainment,
So it's still like, a community coming together.
community. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
nice
Thanks for sharing. So yeah, that's how they do it in Ireland.
in Ireland. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Anyone
Juliet
else there that is would like to? Okay.
share. There's someone. Yeah. So see, Glenn said they just had, the Philippine Independence Day parade in New York last weekend. That's a big one. The New York City Philippine Independence Day parade. Thanks for sharing it. I hope you had a great time.
Most likely, like the New York. Oh, shout out to that person. If
Mhm,
you're in
mhm.
New York, try to look at um, the building there. I was
Mhm.
there. The Sultan of Sulu was there
Yeah,
before
the
in
Times
1910.
building.
Yeah, Times Building. Have a look, and you would say, "Oh, okay." Once, um, in the past, America. Yeah, when it comes to if we can talk about it a
Yeah, yeah,
little bit,
yeah.
about the Sultan, or Sultan Jamalul Kiram II.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say he must be the most popular, um, because of, like, probably because of the era that he was in at that time.
Yeah.
He was in the era wherein this newspaper, people, the journalists, they were able to go to the southern part of the Philippines, and just because of that, probably he was
Mm-hmm.
kind of really recognized, maybe on paper, but obviously before him,
Yeah.
the Sultans of Sulu, they were more recognized by surrounding, Asian communities, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, but it's not really on paper. Only the only one that's well documented as well is the one who went to China. I think you have a video about that as well.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, I appreciate you for doing that video, because not many Filipinos know about the that history.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
because of your video, they were able to relate, and
Mm-hmm.
they were able to kind of say, "Oh, okay, that is why." Um, Going back there, right, to that video that you've done about, the Sultan in, I was, you know, before I forget, before
Yeah.
forget this idea, I was thinking before, why in Sulu? I was hoping, actually, I'm hoping that the Sulu, the politicians in Holo Sulu will be able to kind of capitalize on that, uh, the relation that was, um, that, like that Sultan.
Yeah.
I'm modeling at the moment. That Sultan who went to, China, had a good relation with
Mm-hmm.
the Chinese emperor,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Ming dynasty,
Yeah.
right? So, like in the past, it has been a very good relation,
Yes.
right? And it's been well documented,
Yeah.
as seen on your videos as well, or video. And that alone, the Chinese, crowd
Mm-hmm.
in China, in that
Yeah.
particular place, the zoo, um,
Yeah.
they made a mausoleum or something, like a museum about that. I
Yeah.
was
That's
thinking, why not? Hopefully, the people or the Taosugs will be able to make something like a museum, and capitalize on that, as if for, like, as in for tourism. Because
mm-hmm.
how come, or why
Yeah.
not, why not, if the Chinese were able to do it there, over there, why can't we not do it in Holo, in Sulu?
Mm-hmm.
It's for
Yeah.
tourism.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy at the moment that the Sulu is making it, like, um how do you say this thing, it's getting better and better as the day goes
Mm-hmm.
on,
Yeah.
and the tourism locally is quite good at the moment.
That's good.
I must say, yeah, tourism at the moment. And uh, yeah,
Yeah. Uh,
so is there,
uh,
like, can you hear my voice, or is there an
it's a,
audio feedback or something?
well, I earlier there was, pero kanina pa. Now there, it's okay now.
It's okay
I,
now.
well,
Oh,
let's ask the viewers. It's okay on my end, but can people
yeah,
hear him? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
But yeah, you mentioned yeah, the you know, the pre-colonial relations between, the different parts of the Philippines and China back then. Um, it's interesting to say, just a few days, or wait, this yesterday here and 2 days ago, I guess, in the Philippines, June 9th, is actually
mm-hmm.
officially on paper. It's the Filipino Chinese Friendship Day, kasi
Oh,
June 9,
yeah.
1975. Yeah, so 1975 June 9 was when the formal diplomatic relations between, the Republic of the Philippines and the present day, um, People's Republic of China, officially started their diplomatic relations. But yun nga, like you mentioned, the relationship between, for example, between Sulu and China dates all the way back, 1400s, 1300s, 1500s, way before Europeans
Yes.
reach the Philippines or Southeast Asia. Yeah. And then people are also not aware, even Luzon has a great relationship with China too. So Luzon, Butuan, and
Mm.
Sulu, they all have great relationships with the Ming Dynasty or the different dynasties in China, way before we were colonized, way before China itself became what it is now. So
Mm. Mm.
there's a lot of it's interesting for me to share too, kasi present day there's like a lot of conflict between the Philippines and China, the interest around the
Mm.
the Spratly Islands, the different
Mm.
islands that people or the different countries are claiming. And we see, there's this sentiment, like anti-Chinese sentiment. I'm not saying that China is right to claim all these
Yeah.
islands, but I just
Yeah.
want to remind people that at one point in history, the Chinese emperors, who back then were actually the most powerful kingdom in the world,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
respected the sovereignty of the Philippines or the different islands in the Philippines. They
Yeah.
respected the
Yeah.
sovereignty of Sulu, of Luzon, of Butuan, of these different kingdoms. So it's kind of like interesting how now it's like a different story. But yeah, just a reminder, at one point it wasn't always like, and China wasn't always the enemy.
Yeah. 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 But when it comes to China, they probably have their like different mind setting as well, that
Mhm.
we
Yeah,
don't know. We
yeah,
don't
yeah,
know at the moment at this stage because of
yeah.
our mentality. Probably our mentality
Hmm,
has
hmm.
been still it's still there. The colonial mentality. It's
Yeah,
kind of there. No matter what you do at this stage, because our books, our history, we were, as you dubbed it there,
yeah,
miseducated, in the
yeah,
past.
yeah,
So we were kind of saying, oh, we're fighting against what we think maybe they're you know they're doing their best. Well, obviously they're doing their best for their own
yeah, yeah,
sake as well, and for us to judge, it's kind of, we'll see how it
yeah,
goes.
yeah.
So it's a delicate topic, as I should say. So let the politicians do their
Hmm.
thing. So yeah.
Yeah, it is always a complicated,
Mm,
geopolitics is very complicated. So it's
very
not
much.
always black and white for me. It's like for me, I don't see it as black and white. I don't see like a just because we have a conflict with this country, it means that they're the enemies. Of course they have their own perspective, and there's for me there's always a middle ground that we can
Mm,
meet in the middle where everybody gets you know benefit.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
thanks. Yeah,
yeah,
thanks for bringing that up.
yeah. I'd say
Um,
with the yeah
go ahead.
with the people, like the modern, I should say, call it modern or
Hmm.
millennial, or call it like this age anyway, the modern age. Nobody wants to conquer um, anyone anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody wants any war. Everyone wants to be like, at peace and all these things. And I must say, we are very much, um, we're very lucky that we're born
Mhm.
at this day and age, wherein we don't need to conquer anyone's like property or nation or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, we became softer. You know, we became softer compared to our ancestors.
Yeah.
But yeah, we should be thankful. That's why, like, we should be moving on to being peaceful, being like good with our neighboring countries, with our, even like, between Filipinos. The
Mhm.
people of the
Especially.
south, people of the north. We should all be kind
Yeah.
of saying, hey, we look towards peace. We look towards becoming better, along with each other. So
Yeah.
I must say,
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
yeah,
Make sure that yeah that what do you call this reminder for folks to
yeah,
reflect on these things.
to reflect on this as, yeah. So talking about Kalayaan again,
Hmm.
um, for those people who just tune in now,
Yeah.
we are talking about freedom. We're talking about Independence Day. So, guys, um, me as a person who grew up in the southern part of the Philippines, and I always ask myself, how should we celebrate Independence Day?
Mm-hmm.
And when should we celebrate the Independence Day? Um, because we always claim, as usual, that the
Yeah.
Sulu and some parts of the Mindanao, we were not colonized by the Spaniards. We were not defeated by the Spaniards, if I
Yeah.
may say.
Yes.
Should we celebrate that on the June on the should we celebrate that on if we do, how should we celebrate that? That's
Mm-hmm.
my impending question.
Yeah.
So okay, that's good.
Yeah. Folks can answer that question too. It's not just for us to answer, but
Exactly. Yeah.
people watching,
If you
it's
can
also a
leave your
question for you.
comments,
Yeah.
yeah. If you can leave your comments, what's your views?
Yeah.
What's your perception about this? And we are not trying to make this the we're not promoting any separatism here. We're just kind of going back to
Mm-hmm.
let's say the history. We're just trying to diminish, if I may
Mm-hmm.
say, the Philippine
Yeah.
history.
Yeah, and it's important. What do you call this? It's important, very important to recognize the different, sides of the Philippine history that are not usually, taught in schools, or not usually seen in the media. So,
Yes.
um, yeah, so it's not about, you know, what do you call this? It's not about fanning flames of division. It's more like recognizing that we all have different, we come from different backgrounds, we have come from different experiences. That what's free, what's Independence Day for us in the North may not be the same, way in Sulu and Mindanao. So it's just a reminder for folks that yun nga, may ibang perspective na dapat din pakinggan, na dapat ding listen to and
Yes.
understand that you people in the south have a very different understanding and experience with the Philippines itself. And yeah, um I guess that kind of brings me to this. I got a couple of questions from my one of my elders in Pampanga, who is not able to
Okay.
join, unfortunately, right now. But he was asking, for example, his main concern was, whose independence are we celebrating? What do we mean? This is more of I guess a food for thought for people to reflect on. Not really like a divisive question, but
Yes.
for him, it's like, whose independence are we celebrating? What do we mean by Filipino? And for example,
Mm.
for him, his main concern, actually, one of his main concerns throughout these years is like, why can't Kapampangan celebrate Independence Day in our own language in Pampanga? Because
Okay.
if we look
Good
at,
point.
yeah, that's actually like a great point. It's like, okay, I'll bring that up. Because whenever we celebrate Philippine Independence Day, it's always
Yeah.
Tagalog, Filipino. But we forget that that this celebration should be for the whole country. Even though, sure, Tagalog or Filipino is now the national language officially, it doesn't mean that we cannot celebrate the Independence Day in our native languages, because there's a lot of, like, for example, in Pampanga, there's a lot of issues before where, or in different parts of the Philippines, where, for example, when they would sing the national anthem in their own language, they get in trouble.
Okay.
Some
Yeah.
people get arrested.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it's
Mm.
like they get punished for celebrating Philippine Independence Day in their own mother tongue. So for a lot of our elders in outside the Tagalog speaking parts of the Philippines, why can't we celebrate Independence Day in our own language? Why must we? This is a good direct quote from him. Why must we speak and become Tagalog in order to become Filipino? Because nowadays, even when we say the Filipino language, we think of Tagalog right away. When it should be like, or the Filipino identity as represented by this Philippine Independence Day should have been encompassing of everybody. Yet when we actually celebrate it, it's just focusing on one ethnic group or one language. So for him, it's like we should reflect on these things. Why? You know. So
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
just some reminders from our elders. Na yeah, even the history of the Katipunan. People think Katipunan is one. There's a misconception that Katipunan is the entire Philippines fought in the Katipunan. That's not true. Sulu and Mindanao did not, and parts of Visayas did not. They had their own groups. And then the other
Mm.
part is that, the other end, they say like, oh, Katipunan is just a Tagalog thing. It's not. he's not even just Tagalog, because the members, even the founder of Katipunan, some of them were actually Kapampangans. Bonifacio's
Mhm.
Kapampangan. People don't know
Yeah,
that. A
yeah,
lot of the other Katipuneros, si Aurelio Tolentino is also Kapampangan. Even Rizal has cousins in Pampanga, although Rizal identifies, of course, as Tagalog. Um, and it was, and plus when they fought for it, it was meant to liberate the entire Philippines, not just one ethnic group. That's why we see them. Actually, if you look at the documents from the first Philippine Republic, it's in Spanish, because they realized that
yeah,
we
yeah.
cannot
I thought
we
Rizal
cannot use, yeah, because it's the
is
language that everybody
Spanish,
understood.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, most of
not
the time.
it wasn't to promote Spain. It was more like,
Hmm.
this is being practical. This is the language that everybody
Yeah,
understands.
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So just a reminder for people that even the Hatipunan itself is multi-ethnic, multilingual.
Multilingual, yeah. That brings me to there's a movie I watched a couple of months ago. It's 1898 or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. It's a foreign movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's um it's actually a Spanish
Oh, is
sort
it
of
the
movie.
in about
movie.
Baler?
That I don't know about that. I can't remember about Baler, but
Yeah.
I think the Philippine actors. There's about three Philippine actors that's there that I recognize. Cesar Montano was there,
Oh.
and Raymond Bagatsing, and there's
Oh
another
yeah.
fella, um, another one.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember his name, but yeah, I know he's a Filipino actor. So they were there, and they were talking about the movie was about the last
Mm-hmm.
Spanish
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the Philippines.
soldiers in the Philippines.
Yeah.
So I can't remember the exact title, but it's about 1898,
Yeah.
maybe something like that, and it's very interesting. So they were mentioning about Nueva Ecija. They were mentioning
Mm-hmm.
all these places that whatever the war, in the past, it happened there, and
Yeah.
the guys from Cabanatuan, the guys and all these things. I was like, whoa. So basically, the war in the past, and like it was well concentrated, like in that area when it comes to
Yeah.
Spanish war against Philippines. Obviously Manila, obviously Cavite, and all these the places. But it's an interesting movie.
Yeah. And it's
Mm.
I've actually seen that movie before, and it's interesting to see from the other perspective, from the Spaniards. Then, um,
Yes, yeah.
yeah,
Was it directed by? It was all Spanish, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah.
a Spanish. There's actually a an American. There's another movie that's called Amigo, and
Okay.
it's about the same story, because it's the one in, actually it's the one. Yeah, I was right. It was the one in Baler. It was the last stand of the Spaniards in the Philippines. So there was another movie produced by Americans, called
Mm.
Not Baler, called Amigo, that
Okay.
shows the Filipino side of the story, the American side of the story. So it's interesting how we can reflect and see these things from different sides, and it's not to promote one side, or for these watching these doesn't mean like I'm gonna agree with the side of the Spanish, but it's just it's sometimes it's really nice to really see from their perspective to understand
Different
the whole
perspective.
situation
Yeah.
better. Yeah, hindi pwedeng isang perspective ka lang.
Correct. Even like look what's happening right now between yourself and myself. My perspective as a growing kid in the past,
Mhm.
in the Philippine in Sulu, and my perspective, my experiences. So we always have like different takes.
Yeah.
And one thing that I always I'd say, or maybe people will always like hear, that the Sulu or Tausug or Sulu or people from Mindanao,
Mhm.
they always shout for independence, even though, well,
Mhm.
that's a different independence as well.
Yeah.
But when you really look into that, the independence that they're like trying to reclaim is the independence really that they had in the
Mhm.
past,
Mhm.
you know, and just just what I've been pointing out earlier,
Mhm. Yeah.
that they were independent. They were free from the Spaniards
Yeah.
during those times, and they always shout for independence. Because of that, the mentality is still there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we want to be independent. We want to be free. We want to do our own thing. Which, like in the past, they've been doing what they
Mm-hmm.
want to do in the
Yeah.
past because they have their own independence.
Yeah.
If you try to look into the history of Sulu and other parts of Mindanao, that's when you kind of really realize, oh, that's the reason why they're looking for independence because
Mm-hmm.
their independence parang
Yeah.
nabitin eh.
Yeah.
It's maybe that's a proper term
Mm-hmm.
of saying
Yeah.
nabitin. They were not really recognized, and at the same time they were recognized,
Mm-hmm.
and because of the war in between the World War II, Second World War,
Yeah.
ang daming nawala ng mga dapat sanang
Yeah.
mangyari pa. Probably it's
Yeah.
because of that. That's why um, when things were coming back,
Mm-hmm.
the ideology that's kind of still there in the minds of the
Mm-hmm.
Tausugs and some parts of the Mindanao, it's still there
Yeah.
because the elderlies they heard them from their elderlies,
Yeah.
and which is kung totoosin naman talaga,
Mm-hmm.
meron silang um, tama naman ang
Yeah.
pinaglalaban nila.
Yeah.
But then, in the context of modern world, it's not really applying, or it's not really, how do you say this? It's not applicable much because it will always result in like fighting. It will always result in atrocities and all these things. And I
Yeah.
mean, as I said earlier, who wants that? Nobody wants that anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody wants any atrocities.
Yeah.
Everyone would like to kind of be good with each other.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, I remember this really when I was still growing up there. We always okay. Sabihin na natin we've moved on, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't want war. We don't want. We just want you guys to accept us as
Mm-hmm.
Filipinos.
Yeah.
Probably you've heard about this saying that kahit kami ay taga Mindanao, mga
Mm-hmm.
Filipino rin kami.
Yeah.
It's always that saying, mga
Yeah.
Filipino rin kami. Before, in the past, remember the article that I've read, when the Americans went to Sulu at that time, they were describing the Tausug in particular. Oh, they look different.
Mm-hmm.
Their
Mm-hmm.
aura,
Yeah.
their fierce. They're different from the Filipinos. You can really see the difference.
Yeah.
That's how the Americans in the past described Tausugs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what happened there when the Tausugs became Filipinos because of the treaty, because of the agreement, and yeah, they signed and all.
Yeah.
Okay. In fact, it stated there that when that treaty or agreement was
Mm-hmm.
signed, it was signed because most of the Moros in the past
Mm-hmm.
they agreed to join the Filipinos, which means in
Yeah.
the past they were not Filipinos.
Mm-hmm.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, we're just trying to re-educate ourselves here. We're not trying to say they're different, they're
Mm-hmm.
separate. We're just describing what the Americans in
Yeah.
the past were saying. Okay, just in case, baka naman sabihin ng mga nanonood medyo we're trying to revolt. No, we're not.
Yeah.
Okay, going back there. So yeah, they were describing the Tausugs. Oh, they're different from Filipinos, which means in that context, Tausugs were not Filipinos in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the treaty and the agreement that was done, Tausugs became Filipinos,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And then what the Americans did when they were accepted in Sulu,
Yeah.
they tried to educate the Filipinos or the Tausugs. There were lots of American
Mm-hmm.
teachers who went
Yeah.
to Sulu. I think you mentioned that as well in your video.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so they went there. Sabi nga nila, even if you're like grade 3, grade 4, at that time you're able to talk
Yeah.
in English, American English at that time. So what they did, they um, they made Tausug Filipinos. They educated them, and then they
Mm-hmm.
were like, okay, we're Filipinos now. And
Yeah.
it turned out to be, in the long run, as the years went by, Tausugs were trying to, let's say, prove to other
Yeah.
Filipinos that, hey guys, we're here. We belong to the Philippines as well.
Yeah.
We're Filipinos as well. Recognize us. So there's always that something that the Tausugs
Mm-hmm.
are always trying to prove, guys, we are Filipinos as well.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's not only you there, but us as well. So these are
Mm-hmm.
the things that I grew up with.
Yeah.
We're always saying there, well, kahit naman nasa um, Sulu tayo, Filipinos din naman tayo.
Yeah.
But for me, growing up, I didn't understand that. I
Yeah.
didn't understand that because I didn't know about the history much. I just knew, okay, we were not conquered. But as I said, as a growing up child, you don't really care much about it. You just went by, you just get on with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, um, that's kind of a,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm having any points there, but
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
the Mindanao, the Tausugs were always now, like in the past, we were not Filipinos. And then when we became
Mm-hmm.
Filipinos, we're still trying to prove, hey guys, we're Filipinos as well. And up to this stage,
Mm-hmm.
Tausugs are still like trying to say, hey, we're Filipinos as
Yeah.
well. Recognize us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, like correct me if I'm wrong, guys. The viewers there, have you anything like that experience? Right,
Mm-hmm.
comment down below, and we'll
Yes.
see.
Yeah, and it brings me back to the questions from my own elders, like why can't or why must we speak Tagalog to become Filipino? Because unfortunately, a lot of people who are from or unfortunately a lot of people Filipinos who are from the Tagalog speaking parts of the Philippines, they're not aware that in other parts of the Philippines there's this kind of like an alienation, like yeah,
Mm,
sure, we're part of the Philippines, but whenever we talk about being Filipino, whenever we celebrate Independence Day, you should speak Tagalog to us. There's that experience for a lot of Filipinos that that's not their first language, that's not
mhm.
their mother tongue. So for them it's like, why do we have to give up a part of our identity to become part of the bigger um, you know identity that we now call Filipino? So it's not. I mean, I'm pretty sure that it's a strong sentiment in it amongst the Tausug, amongst
Mm,
the Maguindanaoans, but it is also a certain degree of it are also felt by Kapampangans, by the Visayans in particular.
mm.
Because even if you watch the mainstream media, they always make fun of the Visaya in the
Yeah.
different movies and
Yes.
TV shows.
Correct.
So for them, like, why must we be the joke of every movie, of every TV show,
Mm, correct.
when we're
Yeah.
also equal technically? We should also be equal under the Philippine flag.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Hmm. But
and
what do you
yeah, go
think
ahead.
about that? Is that part of being colonized as well? That Filipinos, whenever we think about other people, we're kind of well, not us
Mm-hmm.
generally. The notion, just like that, the Bisaya and all,
Mm-hmm.
they're being make like in the movies. People are making fun of like, hey, parang Bisaya or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes, hey, there's always like notion like, hey, Muslims are like this and like that.
Yeah.
Is that like part of like being like colonized, or is it
Mhm.
like really a Filipino thing?
Like the stereotypes against the other groups. Is that what?
Stereotyping,
Yeah.
yeah.
Part of it is it has a lot of roots in colonialism where historically speaking, no, a lot of it has, not saying entirely it's a colonial product, but a lot of it was heightened during colonialism. A lot of it was because in order for the Spaniards and even the Americans to control the Philippines, they had to divide the different people from uniting against them. So we see this in the history of the Philippines a lot of times. For example, I just want to highlight, for example, um, you can see in the Spanish records themselves that they in Central Luzon they instigated, for example, Kapampangans to discriminate on Aitas, or the
Mm.
Zambals to discriminate on the Aitas, just to forge these divisions. So so a lot of this, I guess stereotyping and prejudice against the other groups has roots in colonialism. I'm not saying that it's entirely because of colonialism, but it was really, kumbaga, lumala dahil sa colonialism. And
Oh,
even after our independence, that mindset is still there of like them being the other, them being like, not us. Yeah.
it's like whenever we see, probably in the past, whenever they see like the Spaniards, oh, they look beautiful.
Hmm.
It's kind of
Yeah. That's
the
that's
skin
part of
color
it.
and
Yeah.
everything. Ah,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Where in fact, when you actually get out of the Philippines,
Yeah.
um, you would kind of realize that the guys here, right, especially in Ireland, they love the skin of the Filipinos because, oh
Hmm.
my God, it's healthy skin. But when
Yeah.
you go to the Philippines, it's like, oh my goodness, whitening soap everywhere,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
So
the
it's a
obsession.
colonial mentality, probably,
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
we
yeah,
want to be like them, and then, realizing that, oh, it's not a good thing.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, i-
yeah. We
it's
were we
very,
were raised.
yeah, it's actually very educational, or very educating when you go abroad, when you travel from like out of the country of the Philippines. That's when you kind of
Mhm,
really realize that, oh, okay, even themselves here in Ireland or anywhere else, there's
mhm.
always that something that they're kind of looking at other nation to be like better than them. There's always like something like that anyway.
Yeah,
So I guess it's human nature,
yeah, yeah,
part of
yeah,
human nature.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It is part of human nature to to have a distrust of another, a different person, or person from a different background. Yeah, and you mentioned the whitening, the obsession
Yeah.
with white skin. Although just wanna share with the viewers that I guess we see a light skin as beautiful even before the Spaniards came. There's this understanding that the lighter skin you are, the more beautiful you are back then, even in pre-colonial
Okay.
Philippines. Kasi, well, part of it is because we're a tropical country, so usually the ladies from the nobility, the ladies from the royal families, they have lighter skin because they don't go out in the sun to farm. So that
Okay.
became
Yes.
like a part of the culture. That's why we have the umbrella even in the sun.
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't as bad as it is now, where everyone is really obsessed with being
Yeah.
looking. And then that has a lot to do with, again, colonialism from the Spaniards and even the Americans, who really perpetuated this idea that the white race is the supreme race. At one point in history, that's their ideology, and a lot of them still believe that now, especially here in the U.S. but but
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, it has a what do you call this? Yeah, so like what Shade Gray is saying in the comment, light skin in pre-colonial Philippines was more of a class, because of like the classes. It's a classist thing and not a racist thing. But now it's a whole different layer into it because of colonialism and racism.
So
But yeah, so
ibig
go ahead.
sabihin pala, noon pa man nadiskubre ng likas papaya.
I don't know if they had the papaya soup back then, but yeah,
Yeah. No, I'm just
yeah, that's
joking.
funny. Yeah,
Kidding, guys. Kidding.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can say some or highlight some comments. So Kalu Beast 55, another Suki to my in my live stream. Speaking of independence, I think a lot of us don't talk about American colonization. A lot of Philippines may not have been part of the Spanish Empire, but it was part of the American Empire at that time. Yeah, so
Mm,
that is true. Like, and we mentioned this earlier in the beginning, how there's different I guess, phases of our colonialism in the Philippines and history of resistance. Yeah, the Philippines or like parts of the Philippines, like Sulu and Mindanao, were never part of the Spanish Empire, but they were part of the American Empire because when they came, that's when you know they included those the southern part of the Philippines. Yeah, just a good reminder for folks na again the our I guess too is that a lot of Filipinos have this mentality that the Americans are good. The Americans,
mm,
saved the Philippines from the
yes,
Spaniards
yeah,
because
yeah.
they, if you look at the textbooks, like the Spaniards were evil colonizers and the Americans gave us democracy and education.
Mm,
That's not
mm.
actually true. Because
Yeah, yes.
um, what do you call this? Even if you look at just the public education system in the Philippines, it dates back to the Spaniards, not the Americans.
Mm,
It just happened that you know we saw America as a savior because of the miseducation of the Philippines. I just want to share a little bit about that for the viewers. I do mention it a lot in my videos, but just to give more context,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
what do you call this? When they got to the Philippines, one of the very first thing they did, even while they're still fighting the war, was to send teachers in the different parts of the Philippines to start, for lack of a better word, I'm not gonna mince my words, is to brainwash the younger Filipinos, not even the adults, the younger ones, into thinking
Yeah,
that the Americans were the saviors of the Filipino people. So there's a lot of propaganda in the education system in the Philippines in the 1900s because of the Americans, and sadly, a lot of it actually kind of still has that, the remnants of that education system is still in the Philippines. um, yeah, so it was really a purpose on purpose that they miseducated Filipinos. Um, and it wasn't just to miseducate them in terms of, like, cutting them off from our roots, from our ancestors, but there's also part of that, and on the huge part of it that I want to mention that I don't usually mention in my video, or I think I did, but I don't know. But another side of that miseducation was they actually trained younger Filipinos into becoming workers. The education
mm,
system in the
yes,
Philippines under
correct.
Americans, you know, um, the actual term that they used was industrial education. That's the system they implemented in the Philippines. Is to and it's on purpose that they would teach Filipinos, the children, to make products, to make furnitures, to make different types of products in the Philippines that they can then sell in the United States. So at an
Yes,
early age, the emphasis was not to teach them to think critically, but to teach them how to be workers. So that's
yeah.
another, what do you call this? Another side to that miseducation that a lot of people are not aware of, and
Mm, mm,
you know that's how we get the mentality, or this, a lot of this colonial mentality is still around us today.
mm, mm. Well,
Yeah.
it's for their own good, and obviously, they didn't just go there just for the
Mhm.
sake of, hey guys, we're here,
Yeah.
we'll give you a hand,
Yeah.
but it's more of, yeah, on paper or in
Hmm.
paper,
Yeah.
that's how they want us to kind of see, but in
Hmm.
reality, as you were saying there, it's for their own good as well. And
Hmm.
well, in a way, we we should be thankful as well with the Americans on what
Hmm.
they've done to us. But at the same time, we should not forget
Yeah.
that the miseducation there,
Hmm.
and until now, like for many years, we're kind of miseducated, and well, as an obvious reason for that, they were kind of colonizing us as well,
Yeah.
and we're just talking here, guys. We're not
Yeah.
trying to be against America,
Yeah.
but it's just that we're just expounding
Yeah.
what really happened in the past. What's their purpose?
Yeah.
And yeah, as you probably know now, myself and Kirby, we're not in the Philippines at the moment,
Hmm.
but yeah, this is part of being Americanized at that time. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when like the education that we had, but because of like we're educated and all, but it doesn't mean that we should not be forgetting
Yeah.
like the history, how
Yeah.
Americans educated Philippines and all these things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's to remind us to, to think critically that, nobody is really a purely evil or purely good,
yes, yeah,
side. Excuse me.
yeah, and there's so many people interested. Really,
Yeah.
it's amazing to see the comments and all these
Yeah.
things. Have you anything there that you'd want to um, answer? Is there any questions, guys, that
Yeah. Let's see.
you would want Maestro Kirby here to answer? And by the way,
Mm.
if you if you have time, guys, go and check out Mr. and Mrs. K.
Yeah.
Shameless plug here.
Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. K YouTube channel.
Yeah. Let me try to link it again. I think I linked it earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Um, there's a lot of, like, sides to this story, and even perspectives, even for Filipinos themselves. The different parts of the Philippines have different experiences. Um, Charlie 500 said something that recognition of local
Okay.
heroes and the common theme of our ancestors fighting for their freedom is how to. I guess that's their answer on how should we celebrate Independence Day. His answer is, to recognize local heroes, then not just the ones in the capital, or not just the ones in the Katipunan, but also the
Yes.
local heroes who fought for
Yes.
independence. Because I guess it brings me to this point that, the celebration, I guess, is not really the date. The date is just the date
Okay.
that we do it, but overall, the celebration should be about that, that fight, that struggle for regaining that independence that we lost because of colonialism. Um, so
Mm,
so yeah, so that's a good reminder from Charlie that, that we should also celebrate the local
that's
heroes
right.
that also fought for independence, even before the revolution. I guess I want to remind people too that even though the Katipunan happened in 1896 and the Philippine Republic Revolution happened in the 1890s, in 1898, 1899 Philippine American War, it doesn't mean that our ancestors did not fight back the state colonialism. It doesn't mean that we just allowed ourselves to be colonized for 300 plus years. Because,
Okay.
throughout the Spanish, a lot of people are not aware that throughout the 300 plus years of Spanish colonialism in the Philippines, there are 200 revolts that happened throughout the Philippines. Um, Fighting against the Spaniards, we did not easily surrender the independence or the freedom of our people to the colonizers. Yet, we forget about that, and I guess that's something that we should also remind ourselves during whenever we think of celebrating Independence Day. That it's not just the culmination of that fight, but the long struggle. Because every each of these revolt has an influence, to the future struggle that happened. Even the Katipuneros recognize that. Even they recognize that they're inheriting an older struggle for freedom against the colonizers. Yeah, so just want to
Mm,
remind folks that there's over 200 plus revolts that happened in the Philippines against the Spaniards before
Spanish. Yeah.
Jose Rizal was even born.
Yes. Yeah. But I, it it comes up in my
Mm,
head at the moment.
yeah.
How do we? Is there any way that well, obviously, aside from let's say you talking about this on YouTube, right, or like on
Mhm,
online, is there another way, like for instance, yourself, aside from getting your books, right? Um, is there any way that the Philippine history books that's kind of
mhm,
being distributed in school,
mhm,
is there a way for that to be kind of, the term is not corrected, but probably
mhm.
um, there should be something done when it comes to the Philippine history,
Yeah.
like redirect, I suppose, redirect the history into according to like what really happened, and
Mhm,
probably um, I'm not sure at the moment if the history books, Philippine history books, are still talking about the Sulu Sultanate, the struggles, or the way we fought,
Hmm.
or not me, but like my ancestors fought against the Spaniards.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
sure about that. Like I haven't heard anybody. Maybe
yeah.
I haven't asked anyone. So is there any way to incorporate, like for instance, whatever you've learned,
Hmm.
during your time as a historian,
Hmm.
is there such a thing, or is there any way to put this into the like the books where
Yeah,
the kids in the Philippines are like reading, or
yeah.
what way?
Hmm.
What way?
Well, how do I answer? How should I answer this? Um, for me, honestly, there's a lot to update in the textbooks that are used in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of problems that needs fixing in the education system in the Philippines. If I was to be honest, if I were to be
Mm-hmm.
honest, I there's a lot of ways to do it. One thing is if we had the support, of the government, if the government is really, prioritize something like this, then they have the resources to do it. But sometimes, no matter who's in power, no matter who's elected, people they tend to be biased towards a narrative that favors their own version of history. Sadly, so so hopefully in the future we get a government that really, what do you call this? Have a more scientific approach to the education system that you know that we should, I guess, what do you call this, fix the problems that is plaguing the education system in the
Mm-hmm.
Philippines. um, and it for me there's no quick solution. It's oh there's no such thing as a quick solution when it comes to these things. But we can start small. I guess even now doing this live streams, doing these videos for me is my own small way of reminding our people that there's different sides of history that are often different stories or different parts chapters of our history that are untold. So this is my way of like hopefully inspiring more people to advocate to fix the textbooks, to fix the narrative of Philippine history, so that we have a better understanding of who we are as a people. Yeah.
So that's very good. So
Okay.
like and subscribe, guys.
Thanks.
Please share Kirby Araulo's YouTube channel,
Yeah.
and so that people will be more and more re-educated, I suppose.
Hmm.
Because even myself, as I said, I keep reminding you here that I'm delighted that I found your channel and I was
Thanks.
able to get in touch with you. And as I said, you're very good in not being biased when it comes to Philippine history, which
Thank you.
is, you know, uh, me on behalf of other Tausugs, I'd say, I
Hmm.
must say, we're glad, we're thankful, and as a person,
Hmm.
um, I appreciate what you're doing and keep
Thanks.
doing what you're doing. And for us, we will be watching your
Yeah.
videos as we move forward.
Yeah. Okay. We are approaching our third hour, so let me know how much longer can you stay? Because I know it's about to be dinner
Okay,
time, or is it really already dinner
yeah,
time in Ireland?
it's kind of yeah. Yeah, maybe give it 10, 15
Mhm.
minutes, and
That's it. Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
thank you for
Okay. Let
that.
me highlight some comments from Shade Gray. I think that independence is an ongoing process, and we're still working to dismantle colonial remnants in our culture and government that continues to subjugate us. That's a great way of answering how about celebrating independence. Yeah, it is an
Mm,
ongoing process. Yeah. Yeah, again, there's no quick solution to fix everything, so it's a ongoing
mm,
process, and that's how we should see Independence Day. It's not a big, it's not this big event that ended everything bad,
mm,
but something that reminds us that the I guess the struggle to dismantle all of this oppressive systems and things in our culture and society, to keep fighting against this oppression.
mm, mm.
Yeah, ano pa
Yeah, the
ba?
oppression and everything. Talking about oppression, there is a book that
Oh
I've
yeah,
read.
yeah. Share about the book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
recently, and it's about the siege of Jolo, 1974. So by Agnes Sheritan Ariman. Shout out to the author of this book. Um, the book is about it. It's not only about the siege of Jolo in 1974, but having read about all these things, it tackled about the short history about Sulu and how it derived into this siege. And again, it's all about freedom. It's all about independence. That's why the likes of MNLF was formed, and the effects of the whole thing, like um, the struggle for independence and all this, the struggle for recognition, basically. And it ended up having the siege, and the book says, um, in conclusion,
Mhm.
the book was saying it there that was it like there was no reason really for the siege. The siege did not really make Sulu better, something like that.
Mhm.
And obviously it did not, because it destroyed Sulu. And then from then on there was some sort of how do you call this thing, people were always
Mhm.
thinking about, is it gonna happen again, that
Mhm.
kind of way. And the peace and order situation wasn't as good as in the 60s.
Yeah.
And well, guys, I'm only talking about this book, okay? And from my own experience, um, uh, growing up there in Holo, at that time, yeah, there were talks about, oh, might happen again, but it did not happen. Um, thank God it did not happen again. And we're kind of in the limbo whether that situation is gonna, like, in a way, it has got into each other's mind at that time.
Mhm.
So that's why the peace and order wasn't as good as, like, recently, I must say, recently. And but then we just get on with it. We got on with whatever we had in the past.
Mhm.
And thankfully, shout out to all the Holoanos, to the Usugs there. Hopefully you can watch this video, that I'm so happy that whenever I see photos from Sulu, they're all enjoying. They're all going from one place to another place. The tourism is really doing
Mhm.
good, basically. And little by little, we are moving on from the siege to hopefully becoming the tourism capital of the south, Sulu. So,
Yeah.
which is good. Yeah. And that is, any other
Thanks for that.
comments, questions, and all these things? As I
Yeah.
said, I'm glad that you were able to. I was able to join you
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
live streaming,
Yeah.
and we made this possible.
Yeah.
Thank you, internet.
Yes. Thanks to the internet. Yeah. So we're
Yeah,
streaming from California, Ireland, and people watching from the Philippines and other parts.
Philippines. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah. What else should we before we let you go? But yeah,
yeah.
thanks for joining us and providing your perspective too,
My
because
pleasure.
you have your
Thank you
own
very much.
experience and roots. Thank you.
Yes,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so folks, let us know how you celebrate Independence Day in the comments, and how you should celebrate Independence Day in the comments. I'll share more of my thoughts in a little bit too before we end. But before we actually end, let me just greet somebody. one of
Mm.
our viewers right now. So I'll say it in Kapampangan, I'll translate it in English. So maligayang kayaldawan kaniting kapag this is a formal like a really formal Kapampangan way of greeting
Oh,
somebody. So maligayang kayaldawan in kaniting kapag masusyan ning kaya kang pangasupling kang Kitlia Manaloto. So it's basically saying happy birthday to Kitlia Manaloto.
oh, okay.
He was the one who made the app. He made an app to teach people how to write in the in the indigenous Kapampangan script called Kulitan. So
Oh, that's great.
happy birthday,
Yeah,
Pete, or happy birthday, Liam, if you're still
that's
watching
great.
us. Yeah.
Yeah,
So let's
it's
let's
a
yeah, go ahead.
good thing that you're still able to talk in Kamampangan, and you can talk a little bit of like magsukul
Mm-hmm.
and in other I suppose dialects.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, obviously the English would be like a general thing, but I can still speak in Tagalog. I can still speak in Tausug.
Mm-hmm.
So if I may speak in Tausug, I just want to greet them there.
Right.
O mga kabakayan tareton ha sugyaton. Hopefully, well, hopefully it's like English. Um, naka nakalamod ka mo rin doon hayan, nakapang hingog-hingog ka mo, ha video na mo ini, magsukol kanyo katan, sin naka nakahadil ka mo, ha mga ah, pag bitsara-bitsara na mo ini, kahalan sin Independence Day.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, guys, you were able to get yourselves educated, re-educated
Yeah.
by our Filipino historian, a friendly Filipino historian, Kirby.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Salamat. Magsukol.
that's great. Oh, here comes the Tausug guys
Yeah.
commenting. That's good.
Yeah. Someone greeted you.
Oh, oh, thank you very much,
I think
Glenn
Glenn is the one
Magsukul.
from New York.
Oh, wow. What's up, Glenn?
You should visit the Times building.
You should, yeah, you should, Glenn.
Someone, Naya Diwata, commented, nowadays I celebrate Independence Day by by dressing and remembering pre-colonial fashion. Oh yeah, because Naya is a fashion student.
Wow,
See, there's a lot of creative ways to celebrate Independence Day.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah. So let us know how you celebrate Independence Day in your own way. It doesn't have to be like a big celebration, just in your own way. Um, yeah. So I guess for me, the way for me celebrating Independence Day is not really, it's not just about the date itself. It's not just about celebrating yung katipunan like that. But for me, celebrating Independence Day should still be what do you call this, anchored on the principles that led to it. So for me, it's about celebrating. I guess for me, it's celebrating the diversity of the Philippines too, not just not just one identity, but the diversity of the people in the Philippines. That we have our own way, our own experiences, our own histories that we should all recognize. Because for better or for worse, we're part of this country. For better or for worse, the different people in the Philippines are part of this country. Um, and I guess we should. I guess a way of celebrating Independence Day for me is to find ways to unite despite the differences. Find ways to find that unity despite the differences. Build solidarity with the different groups in the Philippines. Not just emphasizing one group over the other. Find ways to understand the other groups in the Philippines. For example, if you're a Tagalog from Luzon, there's a lot of ways that you can find similarities and things you shared with the Visayans or the Lumads in Mindanao, or the Tausug in Sulu. So there's a lot of we share a lot in our culture and in history, despite the many differences. We also share a lot on the on one end we have a lot of differences, on the other end we also share a lot. So for me, it's just finding ways to unite with them, finding ways to understand each other. Because for me, what's I guess my thing is like, what's the point of celebrating Independence Day when we also ourselves discriminate against the other people in our own country, against the other people around us. So for me, celebrating Independence Day should be about about finding unity with each other, finding to promote peace, not just not just unite about something, but unite so that we can
Yeah,
achieve
right.
peace in our communities. What do you call this? How do I say this? Um, yeah. So for me, what's the point? Anong saysay ng kalayaan if a lot of our people are still are 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 deprived of their own freedoms to even speak their own mother tongues. Like for example, like I
Correct.
said, there's a lot of people in the Visayas and in Pampanga who would sing the national anthem in their own language and they get arrested. So what's the point of celebrating Independence Day if we actually are still oppressing other groups in the Philippines? But yeah, so that's one of the aspects of Independence Day for me that I want to remind people that you know it's not just about the June 12th. It's more about fighting or like finding a common ground, finding unity, so we can have peace and justice, more importantly, in our communities. Because
Mm.
what do you call this? We have a saying here in the U.S. In ethnic studies that without justice there can be no peace. So without recognizing the injustices around the Philippines, like for example, what you shared, what happened in the siege of Jolo, what happened in the
Mm.
different the Philippine American War, if we don't recognize those darker episodes of our history, then it's really hard to find that peace. It's really hard to find that that prosperity in our community. We're not really gonna ever achieve prosperity and peace if we don't know how to first find justice and work towards that justice, that that everybody deserves justice. I hope that made sense. I was kind of rambling there.
Yeah, that's yeah. Whatever you say, Maestro, we always pick up something.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, Now that you just mentioned about kalayaan, right? I just happen to kind of think
Mm,
kalayaan in the last bit of your video, the one that you've shown us, at the
earlier,
very
yeah.
beginning. When it comes to kalayaan, at the moment in the Philippines, yeah, we feel like we're malaya, something like that, right? But
Mm-hmm,
obviously, it's not like malaya as in you can just say whatever. There will always be
mm-hmm.
consequences. Whatever we say
Yeah, 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 yeah,
in anywhere, like even here in Ireland, whatever you say, there might be
yeah.
something that people would disagree, and then maybe the law wouldn't allow that really. But
Yeah.
anyway, when it comes to kalayaan as individual, when it comes to traveling and all these things, um, here's my experience, right?
Yeah.
Um, when you're a Filipino passport holder, eto naman para sa mga nangingibang bansa, or Filipinos who's like working abroad, who's not like who hasn't become a citizen or a permanent resident of that certain country. Let's talk like in the airports, right? When it comes to kalayaan, being a Filipino passport holder, we may be, or I'd say we are free, we are malaya in our
Mm-hmm.
own rights. But when it comes to internationally, I just feel like we're not still kind of, obviously for security reason, right? Internationally,
Mm-hmm.
whenever we are at the airport, if you're a Filipino passport holder, if you're probably other nations as well, aside from um, let's say yung mga lugar
Mm-hmm.
or mga puti, mga ganon, sabihin na natin. If you're not coming from that country, there's always something like a question of your, hey, who are you? Hey,
Mm-hmm.
where are you going? I always feel that. So
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to kalayaan, yes, we are Malaya, but then internationally, even up to this stage or up to this day,
Mm-hmm.
we're still kind of, we're not really there yet. Um, I remember me when I was still like a Filipino passport holder. Whenever I fly, I will always be questioned,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But obviously, if your record is good, all these things, it's okay. But the minute I had my Irish passport, whenever I show up, somewhere, anywhere, and I show the passport, there's no question. It's like okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't know. Do you feel something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Are yung mga kababayan natin, there's always something. Still, the kalayaan is not as we're not as free as other nations pa din.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel anyway. So
Yeah.
maybe if you've any experiences like that, if you've seen somebody,
Yeah.
yeah, that's kalayaan still, isn't it? Talking about
Yeah.
kalayaan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. Even here, a lot of Filipinos here are still, or even different, you know, especially in the U.S. Has this like notion that the U.S. is the land of the free, the land where
Yeah.
the modern
Mm,
democracy. But at the same time, a lot of people here, don't feel free at all because there's still a lot of oppression happening. Yeah, I just want to highlight a comment from earlier, from almost
okay.
when we started. Um, so Casimir is just reminding us that when we talk about independence, when we celebrate independence and kalayaan, we should also include the Iguros, the Ifugaos, the Lumads in the concept because they have the same sentiments. Like just the people, the Bangsamoro people too. Yeah, they have the same experience with the Spaniards and the Americans. So just to remind
Yes.
folks
Yeah.
that there's a lot of different groups in the Philippines who also what do you call this experience a lot of these oppression and injustices that we don't often see or hear in the mainstream narrative of the history.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe next time we can
yeah,
get, or if somebody from that
yeah,
group
yeah, yeah,
can join us and we can talk about it, and
yeah,
we will be able to know
yeah,
what's your take.
yeah.
Would be nice because obviously we can only presume what they think, but
Hmm.
we don't know really. Um, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. It's I guess for me, I know there were some questions earlier that we should talk about the different other groups in the Philippines, but for me, I'm like personally that's not my background, that's not my roots, so I'd rather like defer and give the mic to that a spotlight to that person who has
Yes.
that experience.
Yeah.
So as much as I want to talk about the experiences of the Ifugaos, the experiences of the Lumads, I'm not from that background, and Don is also not from that background, so we'd rather have people from that background to share their own experiences, hopefully in future live streams, because I do plan to do more of these live streams. Hopefully people are enjoying the live streams that I've been doing in the past couple weeks.
Looks
Yeah.
like.
Okay, thanks. We
Okay.
are at our 3 hour mark or over 3 hour mark. So any I guess last words before we
Before we
go.
go, yeah. Well, I think the question of how should we
Hmm.
celebrate Independence Day, um, we've heard from you guys
Yeah,
how you're celebrating it. Um, in real sense, we can always celebrate um, whatever way we do it.
yeah,
When it comes to um, you'd like to celebrate it by doing some fashion thing, just like
yeah. Nah, yeah,
one of our
yeah,
viewers there earlier on, Nadia. So it depends, and obviously the way you're celebrating it depends on where you are at the moment,
hmm, hmm,
I should say.
yeah,
But in solidarity, people should celebrate Independence Day um, like peacefully.
hmm,
People should celebrate it um, not just because of the date, as
yeah, yeah,
mentioned there.
yeah,
It should be celebrated. Um, the feeling of being free. So whether you are from northern part of the Philippines, southern part of the Philippines, we should all be celebrating it.
yeah,
Um, that feeling of being free. It
yeah,
doesn't matter what date, really.
yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't matter what date, as long as you are enjoying the moment. Just feel free.
Hmm.
I think.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any last words from the comment section that we can highlight? And we shared some of the definitions or how they celebrate Independence Day earlier. But yeah, again, just to remind people, for Independence Day should not just be about the date itself. Should not just be about, the the formal celebration, or the parades, or the dressing up, or singing of the national anthem. But for me, I guess for me, I forgot to mention earlier, celebrating Independence Day for me should be about, I guess, taking action to help your community. Regardless on how or regardless on what way you can help them. Because we all have a part in the community. And we all have a responsibility to help one another. That's how I was raised. So I just want to
Mm,
share that with people, that a good way to celebrate Independence Day is to help the community around you, to help your people, no matter how you can, or doesn't matter how small. It's still, it's still a big help. Yeah. So if you can find ways to help those who are, especially those who are marginalized, those who are, um, what do you call this? Those who are oppressed, those who are, are struggling in our communities. A way to celebrate independence is, again, to feel free, and to help others feel free. I guess that's a better way to put it too. Like, to help others feel free and help the community, because it's hard to actually celebrate your freedom if you're, if you're hungry, if you don't have, a job, if you're
right.
struggling. Yeah. So yes, so there's a lot of different ways to define and celebrate kalayaan and freedom. Cool. Okay, so we are at three
All
hours
right.
and 10 minutes. Thank you, Don, for joining the live stream. Um,
You're welcome. And
yes, thank you.
I'm sure this won't be the last.
Yes, yeah, and subscribe to Don's channel. I linked it. I linked the main channel. I haven't linked the podcast yet, but
Thank you.
they also have a podcast. Tara, let's talk with his beloved wife. But I'll link the main channel. You can also find the podcast there. On the chat again. So subscribe to Don's channel. Um, yeah, and then stay tuned, because I'll be guesting in their podcast in the near future.
Yeah, that's an official invitation.
Yes, yes, yeah. So before I go, I guess I'll just do a quick. Before we go, I'll just do a quick plug, shameless plug, because we also have to plug ourselves. Oh, it's not loading. But anyways, there's a lot of ways to support my channel. One is to subscribing. If you have the capacity, be my patron on Patreon. For those who, especially in the US, if you have $1 a month to spare, help us, creators out there. And yeah, you can also get copies of my books if you're in North America, or even Europe and in Australia, New Zealand. It's available there too. Actually, it's available in the Philippines through the websites, pero mas mahal lang, so that's why I don't tell people in the Philippines to buy it yet. But yeah, if you go to my website, you can order directly from my website or from lulu.com. Um, I don't have the link here, but yeah, there's different ways to support my channel, support my research, and support me in creating these videos, so I can make more videos like this. But again, you can also subscribe to Don and help them too, and find
Thank
out
you.
how
Yeah,
life is for Filipinos in Ireland.
correct. Yeah. So, on that note, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us in the last 3 hours and a bit. And looking forward to see you again
Mm-hmm.
next time. And
Yeah.
thank you. Magsukul kanyo katan.
Thank you. Yan. So I'll just leave that there. Takala salamat. Takal pong salamat. Kita-kits in Tagalog, or Mikitex in Kapampangan. Thank you again to Datu Don. And thank you everyone for joining us. It's been 3 hours and 13 minutes and counting. And people are still here from when we started, like Kashmir. Yeah. So yeah, also I want to say sorry that we weren't able to answer read all the comments, but there are other plenty times in the future for more live streams. And if you like this live stream and you want Don back in the live stream, future live streams, let us know in the comments. We'd love to have him back. And maybe next time we can also have your wife, your beautiful wife, to join us.
Yes, of course. Yeah. We'll find time for that.
Yay! Salamat po, sabi ni Shade Gray. Lihangin, salamat kaayo. Um, I'm just, yeah, shout out from Casimir. Yeah, so thank you everybody, thank you, and yeah, have a great the rest of your evening if you're in the Philippines. Wait, ano oras na ba dun? Oh, it's midnight there. So thanks for tuning in. So
Yeah.
good night to those in the Philippines, and yeah, have a great day if you're in the US because it's still morning here. And yeah, dinner time na pala sa Ireland. So have a great dinner.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the food is getting cold.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. Baka magalit si ano, si Mrs. K.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Maraming
Salamat,
maraming
salamat,
salamat again. Okay,
Kirby.
sorry. Dakala
I
salamat.
enjoyed. Yeah, I enjoyed. I had so much fun, and for sure next time will probably be. I will probably be better because it's my second time now,
Mhm, mhm.
and obviously it's my second time. But the first time was like years ago,
Yeah.
or a year or something like ago. Anyhow, again, magsukol kanyo katan ha mga nagtatayhog diton ha sugyaton ha mga dukwayng hula magsukol kanyo katan pa mga tausog. Kaya ako ini na may ngat pa sa magtausog. Inshallah, we will see you next time.
See ya. Sana daw masarap yung ulam nyo. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. This will be the end of our live stream today. Stay tuned for more live stream. I don't have one scheduled yet, but stay tuned. I want to bring more people in a live stream too to provide different perspectives. So hope you enjoyed the live stream. Again, see you next time or in Tagalog kita kits and in Kapampangan Mikitix. Bye.
Bye.